OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Very welcome along to OTB AM this morning. Ger and Eoin with you all the way through until 10. We'd love to hear from you. 087 9 180 180 is the number. What do you think of the government moving the country to level 5 but leaving elite sports free to play? So that means we can have rugby, we can have League of Ireland, we can have the Irish internationals, assuming that those games are going to go ahead with regards to UEFA. We can also have the All-Ireland finals if the GAA and the GPA decide to go ahead with them. We'll be teasing that out. We're going to hear from Professor Mary Horgan a little bit later on. We're also going to hear from Tommy Walsh. We'll hear from Graham Hunter, Mick Galwey, Rihanna Jarrett, and we have our GAA Power Rankings. They may well be the very last Power Rankings of the year. I mean, heaven help us if they are, but let's hope they aren't. So we'd love to hear from you. 087 9 180 180 is the number. You can use the hashtag OTBAM as well. Let's bring you some of last night's OTB before we get into things at around about 8 o'clock. We're going to hear from Gavin Riley and Pat Nevin. First, though, here's Ronan O'Gara on Monday Night Rugby. Strong words here about Simon Zebo. Have a look.
In terms of tries served up and in terms of drama, I think it was hugely fulfilling. I think from Racing's point of view, I would say that they will feel incredibly gutted to not have got over the line. I think they can't give up 14 points at the start of the game to Exeter, and I think, as we now realise, that Teddy Ebrin had probably wasn't anywhere near 100%, and unfortunately in a cup final you just can't do that against a quality team like Exeter.
It's funny you mention Ebrin, and that's with Machino on the bench as well, who's a quality player waiting on the bench in that exact position. We were watching the game in a Virgin studio, and early on, I think Ebrin kicked out on the full in the first 5 minutes even, and Fergus McFadden was in studio, and he didn't think Ebrin looked right even at that stage. And there was a point where he was arguing with the coach and saying, no, I'm going to stay on a bit longer. I mean, that's a big luxury to carry, especially when you've Machino on the sideline. Yeah,
absolutely, Joe. I think you've nailed it there. I think Teddy had more errors in 20 minutes than he had in a season and a half, and you look at probably the contrast to I wasn't in the club, but the game, his kicking game against Leinster in Bilbao, was it? I think he just had an extraordinary feel for the ball that night, but everything on this occasion turned to a negative, and you can't give a team like Exeter 14-0 lead. And from a strategy point of view, I think, when you're looking to your 9 to probably kick in pressure zones, he passed to Finn Russell, and not alone did he pass it to him, but he put him on his left foot and he gave him very little option about how to play.
Exeter punished those mistakes and did so ruthlessly in those first 14 minutes. Their power, their forwards, that power game at times looks near impossible to stop. I mean, you could accuse it of being one-dimensional, but when it's that brilliant, it's clearly very impressive.
Yeah, I think, and obviously we played them in Europe, home and away, and obviously they beat us, so our team weren't good enough, obviously, to get near them. But there was some good learnings from that. I think when they get in there, Joe, it's too late. What's crucial is actually the step before that. How can you deprive them of especially their line out 10 metres out from your line? The writing is on the wall even at that stage. So you have to have a policy trying to, using your 22 nearly as a goal line, because for them, their capacity to play the pick and go game is superior to all our team in Europe, and that's essentially, I think, why they have won the European Cup, and that's meant as a compliment to them, that they are very, very good and far superior to other teams in that area of the pitch.
Yeah, I think Sam Simmons is the top scorer in the competition. Just the total opposite to the Racing approach. Why, as a defence, can't you stop them once they get inside your 22? What's so brilliant about what they do, this pick and go game?
I think it comes back to their recruitment too. I think speaking to a few guys from Baxter, a few of the coaching staff over the years, I think their profiling is very interesting about the players they go after and how they see the game, and they predetermined latch near the line, and they have such trust, I think, and detail in how they want to play the game. And it probably became more difficult for them in the fact that with the, I suppose, poaching laws now favouring the defensive team, any bit of hands-on or lifting the ball, it's usually a defensive penalty. But they've they've managed to master it to such an extent that the opposition just can't get, you know what I mean, they can't get any windows to potentially poach against them. So I think it's trust, and trust comes from, I suppose, having periods of times with teammates in extremely difficult periods, and that's what they've done over a 10-year time block. If you look at Karen Steedson's, I suppose, time in the club and his progression and the progression of the club, it's phenomenal what they've done, and it's actually a great rugby story.
Yeah, 10 years ago in that very city, they were making their way into the Premiership for the first time, so it's been really an exceptional achievement by all concerned. You said Racing will be gutted, and they got really, really close. I mean, they somehow clawed their way back into this game. But even throughout doing that, they seem to throw in crazy mistakes. They score try, never seem to take the restart. And then Finn Russell jumps to mind. His pass for the Henry Slade try. You know, we can dress this up. That's just unacceptable for a professional to do.
But that's his game, Joe. I disagree with you.
But doesn't he need to sort his game out if that's his game?
Well, how does they get to the final? By him playing like that. So,
there, though, for that pass, that's madness.
But we're all experts on the couch in terms of that moment, you know what I mean? He would be the first person to put up his hand and go, yeah, I haven't read that well, and that's a huge probably disappointment with him. But I think if you go through how he plays the game and instinctively as he plays, I would probably imagine with hindsight he would have kicked past it as opposed to past it. And yeah, he got it brutally wrong, and that's what happens. But at other periods throughout the season and in that game, he was able to pick out passes that no other people are able to pass. But yeah, I get you. You'd love to find a little bit of middle ground in terms of, does it all have to be all in or not in at all? And but I think that's the fascination of him.
Well, I mean, if he's playing in a game, I'm watching. You know, he is a joy to watch, and there's something beautiful about the way he goes about his business. And the moment of magic in the semi-final at the death is the riposte to the point I've made. But I am surprised he doesn't at times go for a touch more middle ground, like in those moments. I don't know, can he not control himself, or has he been given carte blanche, do you suspect, by the management team to say, look, you're going to make mistakes. We think when it all comes out in the wash, having you doing your thing is going to, you know, beat the downsides. So just do what you want.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think so. And that's what good coaches do as well. I think they know their players. I can remember being in Racing in the early days, and there was talk among the coaching staff about banning Leone Nakaroa offloading the ball. And when you think about that, it doesn't make any sense, because that's his game. Yes, you know, he'll have two horrendous turnovers in a game, but like on side as Glasgow or Munster found out to their cost in that final in Ravenhill, he beat Munster on his own with his offloading game. So there are it's very easy to focus on the negative, I think, but with these special players, I think that's what happens with the relationship with your coach. You do have to give him free rein, but it'll be interesting to see, but you mightn't see it for a while, how Finn Russell reacts in that similar situation, because the only thing comparable would be, you know what I mean, against England or Ireland or Wales in a test game in the last 10 minutes of a game, or a semi-final of Europe or a semi-final of a top 14, because league games don't necessarily, it's a different mentality, and I think it'll be interesting to see how he reacts with the benefit of experience, because experience is doing the same thing but better the next time you get that opportunity to learn from a mistake.
Would you bring him on the Lions tour to South Africa?
Yeah, I think he's a great option in the fact that, you know, he plays very, very differently to anyone else, in the fact that he can change a game for you. At the weekend, people will say, well, yeah, he changed the game to Exeter's favour. There's validity in that. But I think if you're looking about, as you said, the counter-attack to that is his performance, or his pulling out of the top drawer, his chip for Veremi against Saracens. So I think probably what is lost is, in a lot of this, is the fact that I think he has been on an upward graph for 18 months, and probably because of the standards he set, he will be hugely disappointed with that rash decision, but that wasn't that wasn't the one moment that cost Racing the final, if you ask me.
Well, I'm going to ask you what that moment was, but I was going to ask you, why at 28-27 no drop goal?
I take you back another 4 minutes, Joe.
Yeah.
Why at 74 minutes on a soccer pitch on the 5 metre line on a essentially manicured golf green that you don't kick a goal? Okay, it becomes you go ahead by 2 and Exeter have the restart, but I think it just pushes the pressure to a different level on Exeter and on Nigel Owens, in the fact that in the referee's head, he has to give a penalty unless it's blatantly obvious. That would be a huge talking point. And I know Nigel Owens loves that territory and isn't afraid of any of the hard calls. But if Machino kicks that penalty, Racing go 2 points up with 6 minutes to go. I you know, because I think I tweeted after the game about in Cup Rugby, take your points, but I was alluding to the fact for that penalty, I think for me, you just have to kick a goal. Well, then it has to be taken on.
No, I hear you, but so well, that kind of attitude extends to not taking the drop goal a couple of minutes later when they're right under the sticks. This isn't a Johnny Sexton in Paris kind of job. What's the thought process there? Because,
well, for me, a drop goal is the exact same as a try there. You don't have to win a European Cup by 4 points. You can win it by 1.
So explain then, because even New Zealand, Australia didn't do it last week. Is this a modern trend or something?
No, it isn't. And that's... I haven't spoken to Richie Mwanga about that case in that game, and I haven't spoken to Finn Russell about the opportunity at the weekend. But it's obviously very, very easy sitting on your couch without a raging heartbeat. But I think if those two boys, the competitors they are, if you pointed that out to them, there has to be some reason of maybe they missed a moment in terms of getting their thought process. Maybe they saw a complete different picture, where I could see potentially in the Australia game that their last defender was completely tight, but at the same stage a drop goal there is the same as a try, and in the Racing case it's underneath the post literally, where even if there is a charge of or a potential risk, of a block down, but other than that it's very, very difficult to, because of how close you are to not execute. You could actually hit it horribly and it could go over still.
Yeah, I mean,
it was so fascinating. You kind of go, do you know what is at stake? And this is a guy who has missed 5 kicks in a European Cup final in his first one, but you just these things, it's because it's the whole season and everything more and history that's there, and it can be won by a drop goal. It's no different to anything else, because New Zealand had gone the other way. There'd been a massive overemphasis on drop goals, even in Super Rugby and even Mitre 10 Rugby, but it never went through to Australia, New Zealand at the weekend, and in the European Cup. There was 2 other examples of potentially winning or cementing your place in history with a drop goal.
Yeah, because I mean, I don't care if his heart rate's at 190 a minute. They know that they're 2 points down, or what are you, a point down, and they know how close they are to the post, and they know what the clock's at. Like, it would have crossed his mind, and then they would have said, no, we're not going to do that. I just can't make sense of it. I thought I was missing something. So you're a similar boat. You'd have called for that drop goal, clearly.
You have to be screaming. You'd literally be, if you're a replacement, if you're a part of the coaching staff, if you're one of the front 5, I would say if you're one of the back row, you're just you just say, come on, just put this over, you know.
Simon Zebo played very well, 2 tries, didn't look happy coming off.
Yeah, he had an exceptionally good game. I thought, I wasn't surprised in any way. Potentially, I felt maybe his lack of minutes combined with potential illness over the last few weeks, he could have been not at 100%, but you would see he was visibly distraught coming off the pitch, and he emptied the tank, and he was suffering from cramp. And I'd say he would have loved it, but always a big game player, always rises to the occasion. And I think the bigger the test, the better he is. And it obviously creates a debate about what's his future in green as well after that performance.
Does it though?
Well, it doesn't, no. But obviously, with Rob Kearney's retired, Jordan Larmour is injured. Sorry, my regular name blank.
Will Addison.
Will Addison.
For a player that you really like, you forget his name all the time.
I have to say it 10 times in my head, and I won't forget it.
Yeah.
That's my goal.
You're right on Zebo. I mean, he certainly with the injuries at the moment, he'd probably be in the 15 jersey in his current form. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't look like that policy's changing anytime soon.
No, and I obviously completely respect and get what the IRFU are doing and what Irish Rugby are doing, keeping their best players at home. But the other side of that argument is if a guy isn't on a central contract and can earn good money overseas, but he's still a very good option for the test team, I think he'll have to be looked at.
I would hope so as well. I mean, and look, geez, Tommy Bowe was the best signing, the RFU ever had, because he was obviously not being paid here and he was doing his stuff in Wales and playing for Ireland. I mean, and
I think it's ongoing. The changes too. You would like to think, Joe, that potentially in France, yes, there are some horror stories, no doubt about it. But you'd like to think that the level of coaching and the level of professionalism is rising all the time. It's in the club's interest to look after players as well, so that everyone with any bit of ambition within them wants them playing at the highest level. So for us in La Rochelle to get 2 players just in the French 31-man squad was a massive disappointment. So that's a burning goal for players and staff within us, because you want to see them hopefully chasing their dreams and playing in blue. And we have boys going for South Africa, playing with Argentina, playing with Fiji. But when you're coaching in France, you want to see them play for France as well. And I think it is going to go like soccer, I think, in the fact that the club game is going to be huge, but the international game, nothing beats it, and the best players want to play with the best players irrespective of where they play the game. I think if you look at the ideas that Doug Howlett brought to Munster, that a lot of us brought to Irish camp, that's a benefit to everyone.
And a last quick one, just the clock's against me. Do you think if they made an exception for a Zebo and maybe one other or 2 others, where possible, pick the Irish-based player, do you think if they made an exception for Zebo, it would have any material effect on players deciding to move abroad?
No, I don't think so, because I wouldn't be of the opinion of making an exception. I think maybe a flexibility in the rule in general might be important, because I think if you have a guy that's playing for Munster, Ulster, Leinster or Connacht, he's a good chance of starting in the Irish team. If you have more people in top clubs spread around Europe, that creates more competition. The counter-argument to that is obviously you want to keep the control of the players and the best players playing. But at this stage, that cycle has nearly gone on 20 years, in the fact that we're so dependent on Munster and Leinster and Ulster players to an extent that if you can get, for example, in the back row, there are so many good players. You probably have 9 potential starters, or 12 at Irish level. They all don't necessarily have to be playing in Ireland. Some of them can be playing overseas if they are. But I think also too that not an awful lot of the players playing, they test the market, and if there's opportunities to go, they obviously really, really consider that. But then what it comes back to is that the players in Ireland get really well looked after on and off the pitch.
Listen, our time is up. Thanks so much. We'll be talking to you over the next couple of weeks. Six Nations resuming. Thanks very much, Ronan.
See you, Joe. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Ronan O'Gara there from La Rochelle. By the way, this Saturday, it is a Six Nations experience again, a different one, albeit you won't be at the Aviva Stadium. Therefore, we're teaming up with Vodafone, who look after all our rugby coverage here, to give you and 4 of your family or your friends the chance to watch the game on Zoom in the company of Off the Ball's Sheahan and an Irish legend that we'll be announcing later in the week. And the deal is you get to ask them any question you want before, during and after the game. So they're your personal reference point throughout. It's an end-of-week prize. We'll also give away a nightly prize of a Google Home Hub, a signed team poster and an Irish jersey. To be with the chance of winning tonight, tell us, when was the last time the Italian men's team beat Ireland? What year did the Italian men's team beat Ireland? Your name and answer to 53106 for 30 cents and we'll call you back over the show. And obviously, we want you and 4 others ready for the afternoon, this Saturday coming, 24th of October, 2:30 to 6 o'clock. All with thanks to Vodafone, official sponsor of the Irish rugby team. Hashtag team of us, everyone. You mentioned the Old Firm. Rangers 2, Celtic 0. 4-point lead at the top of the table for Rangers. Celtic have a game in hand. Is this the year?
Well, I've been at the last 2. But by the way, listen to the stutter just before I say that for Old Firm, right? I don't know if you know the background. Do you know the background of this?
No, go on.
Right, if I say those 2 words in the same sentence, right, I will get tweeted to death. Because half of the community does not believe the Old Firm exists any longer, because a lot of Celtic fans think that this is new Rangers, this is a different club, so it's not the Old Firm, this is a different derby, and you can't. I cannot stutter when I say it now, so I always say the Celtic Rangers game.
Right. Well, I'm going with Old Firm, and they can come at me.
And I think most people do. So anyway, watching it for quite a long time, and Rangers got pretty close last season. Watching what I've seen this season, Rangers are ahead at the moment, and not just in points, but the way the team is playing technically, the spirit they've got within the group, the intelligence of the play. Celtic have stuck to this three at the back at the moment, and it wasn't working against Rangers. And Stephen Gerrard, give him due, he's got that team playing really well, and some of the players that he's brought in have been absolutely superb. There's a lad called Kamara playing for Rangers who was brilliant. Ryan Kent, what a player he is, and Rangers are very fortunate still to have him just now. I think the bigger clubs down south will be looking at him very closely. But they're a team that actually plays with fantastic confidence, a really nice style of football. And I watched the Celtic team. Now, there are a lot of players missing, important players missing. You know, they had Edouard, the centre forward, missing. Christie, the most creative player, missing. But I couldn't see 2 players in that Celtic team that seemed to be working together in the whole team. And that's a lot. That's a big old thing to say. This wasn't even really close. The Rangers were by so far the better. The sophisticated nature of the tactics were better as well, and man for man were a long way better. So it's a big if. Rangers' big problem up until recently was, have they got enough backup? You know, because Celtic are wealthier and have been for a long time because they've had Champions League football, and they've had a lot of time where Rangers haven't been there, so they've been able to build up this success. However, you know, even Neil Lennon said after the game, you know, are they getting lazy? Are they living on past glories? And it's, you know, you got to ask that question. And he's asking that question. One of maybe the biggest one and the biggest concern, Celtic for a long time, when they needed to rely on somebody, Scott Brown in the middle of that midfield would just go and control games and hit a few people, you know, fairly but strongly, and then wind up people, and then just understand the dynamic of a game and change it. And Scotty looked up, you know, he's 35 now. He can't go on forever doing it, and he won't be able to do it every single week, and I think he would accept that as well. So they've got a lot of problems there that they have to sort out. It'll be close. I have no doubt whatsoever it will be close between Celtic Rangers between now and the end of the season. I'd find it hard to call, but in what I've watched of them so far, and the other thing you need to put that on top of Rangers have lost 3 goals in the league this season. You know, 2 of them were against Hibs, and 1 of them was an OG. That's all they've lost this season so far. I mean, that's pretty good going a quarter of the way just about through the season. That's kind of getting beyond luck now. That's getting to how they know how to defend. So there are a number of concerns with Celtic, and as anyone who's interested in Scottish football at all will know, it's all about one thing. It's only about 10 in a row. Yeah. You know, and you know, I was there watching Celtic. You know, I was on those terraces when they won their 9 in a row with the team that was the old Lisbon Lions team that went into the team that had Dalglish and McGrain and Macari and Hay, and it was an amazing team. And then I played against the Rangers team. I'm sure I've told you a story before. I was playing in a game where we as per for Kilmarnock against Rangers. We beat them second last game of the season, and they failed to win the league, and that stopped the 10 from then. You don't get these things that often. I know it sounds like they do, but this would be a game changer if they get the 10. This would be an incredible thing for the history of that club, and it's all that matters. It really is all that matters. They don't care about anything else, and it's an incredible story. Rangers are throwing a hell of a lot of money at this. I mean, a lot of money at it. They would do anything to stop this. And it's kept Scottish football really interesting.
And now the GAA have to sit down tomorrow at level 5 and say, we have no bubble. We've no bubble. We're not rugby, we're not football, and we even saw the football bubble pierced, despite largely best practice, the flight aside.
And
they have to sit down and say, well, what do we do now? And I don't think they should be in that position.
Well, I mean, look at it even at the highest level of professional sport. You mentioned that the FAI and the issues that it had. You had situations where Cristiano Ronaldo, a 5 or 6 time Ballon d'Or winner, contracted it even despite all the best practice that would have been pursued by the Portuguese FA. And obviously that's a very difficult thing. I mean, it's a very, very difficult call. And I really don't know if even the GAA should be left in a position where it has to make a national decision as to whether it's appropriate for county panels comprised of lads from 20 or 25 or even 30 different parishes should all be coming together and mixing in ways which may not really be considered.
But Gav, of course they shouldn't. Even just think about the sentence you've just said as we are telling people this week to shut down their businesses. And we've got to get businesses open again ASAP and do everything we can to get on top of this disease. That extends to GAA. I mean, think the sentence you just said there, the concoction of different jobs, different parts of the country, coming together, travelling to other parts of the country, madness.
Yeah, and it's part of the difficulty that we've had. And we were only discussing this on the record yesterday morning as well, that there are some in society who kind of have this position now that they believe that if COVID-19 only really has really adverse medical effects on those who are vulnerable or immunosuppressed or basically older, that they want those people to stay out of the way and that the rest of society should be allowed to go back to its lives. But you have the situation where you have lads on county panels who are living with elderly relatives. You've guys who might be living with other people who work in nursing homes. And as long as you have higher, community rates of infection, then it doesn't really matter what you do. You always have to take into account the fact that more interaction results in more transmission and more infections, and more people, unfortunately, end up having to go to hospital or having really adverse health consequences as a result. And, much as I, like anyone else, would love to be talking about the action on the field, particularly after the quiet summer that we had, it's very, very difficult really to make any sort of excuse or any sort of scenario to be portrayed where this is inherently a good idea. Now, whether the GAA might argue for economic grounds that it needs to make sure that it fulfills its obligations, to make sure that it's got the money to bail out counties and to bail out clubs who are going to be going through a really torrid time as a result of the loss of revenue that they've had, for the last couple of months, that's a thing they're going to have to take involved as well. But objectively, it's very difficult to see, much as we'd all love to think otherwise. It's difficult to imagine how this is the sort of acceptable or the sort of indispensable behaviour that we really should be considering at a time like this, unfortunately.
Yeah, listen, we'll let you go. I know you're busy. A very last quick one. Richie mentioned all the leaks. Are half these lads texting you from the cabinet table at this stage? It's open season.
Believe it or not, actually today's announcement, or today's, semi-announcement, obviously, because it hasn't been announced yet. We'll have it announced in about an hour and a half's time. Today's news that the proposal was going to be level 5 had actually managed to emerge before Micheál Martin got into the cabinet room to chair the meeting. And I know there was a little bit of annoyance inside the room that, again, you had 5 hours of the country, really in the doldrums trying to think about this. This is the consequence of slow decision making. One thing that we did have, and I don't say this to defend that government at all, but when we did have the previous government, the minority government of the caretakers, Leo Varadkar was very careful about making sure that there was no leaking, because when he announced the national lockdown at a press conference at 8:30 on a Friday night, he didn't want there to be panic buying. He wanted it to be a little bit of a shock, but he wanted there to be this sense of command and control. Unfortunately, we now have a situation where there's 3 parties in government. You have several ministers who receive NEFIT's recommendations. They're all surrounded by big kitchen cabinets, so there are an awful lot of people who are, in receipt of this advice, plus the 40 people who are on NEFIT itself. There's a lot of people who get the information, and if you want to take your time and make sure that you have a properly rounded decision, it's very difficult to stop that information from getting out. Paper isn't going to refuse ink. Airwaves aren't going to refuse content. So if we're going to be given that information, or if we're able to get it in some way, of course we're going to do that. Yeah. But unfortunately, the nature of slow decisions that are made by larger committees is that when a lot of people are in possession of the info, it's going to get out one way or another.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station. Off the ball.
I heard a few of your teammates in defence talking about Zlatan, and did anything strike you about his play being on the same pitch as him?
The fella is obviously looks after himself so well. He was doing crikey kicks over the height of my head during the warm-up. So for such a big man, he was like a ghost on the pitch. You couldn't pick him up.
Off the ball. Weeknights from 7 and weekends from 1.
This is OTB Sports Radio, live 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
Welcome to Level 5, baby. It's OTB AM this morning from 8 o'clock. If you've got anything on your chest that you'd like to get off it, 0879 180 180 is the number. Professor Mary Horgan is going to join us in just a moment to explain to us about how safe or otherwise it might be to continue playing GAA in Level 5. Is it Level 5 star? Is it Level 5 asterisk? I don't know. Tommy Walsh is going to join us at 20 minutes past 8. We'll do the sports pages. We'll speak with Ken Robinson, who is the CEO of DCU Sport. We've got Eoin's Power Rankings. We've got Graham Hunter talking to us about the return of the Champions League. Rihanna Jarrett is going to talk to us ahead of the Ireland game against Ukraine on Friday at 5 o'clock. Mick Galwey is going to talk to us about the glory days for Kerry and how things are going for Munster at the moment. Well, Eoin, how's your banana bread and Zoom quiz?
Never want to see the sound of a delay again, which is your Zoom conversations every Friday night. You know, chatting over each other, 8 people in a call as people get progressively drunk as we get, and nobody wakes up the next morning having remembered round 7 of the quiz from the night before.
I've had a bit of a journey from. So yesterday I assumed that when we were going to Level 5, because of what Varadkar had said last week on The Last Word, that there was no chance that there was going to be a GAA season. And then even though they were allowing the GAA season to happen, you felt like the pressure coming on the GAA would be so great that they would say, we're not putting our membership at risk because of this. And then you think about it for a while and you're like, well, there will be other sports happening and everybody's going to be sitting at home with nothing to do watching the other sports. Remember France pulled the plug on the league really quickly, and then 2 weeks later everybody was like, actually we might be able to get this back if this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens. And everybody in France was like, why are we no football? What's going on here? Why didn't we at least try this? So I initially was like, that's it, season's over, finish it now, it's gone. And now I'm like, hang on a second, everybody just needs to calm down a little bit. Anybody who's telling you for certainty that you can or can't do something at the moment, I think we should be questioning what's going on.
I think Varadkar is the Michael Donnellan of government. He just goes on these incredible solo runs, and you need to kind of double check where exactly this is coming from. Like the NEFIT recommendation last week was that the GAA can go ahead. The NEFIT recommendation was that the green light can happen. And while we should be listening to everybody in power about what they say, and I mean, they will have their own expertise as well for a whole multitude of reasons, he was actually an naysayer. I mean, the information before last Friday was that the GAA Championship could go ahead. And when he came out and said that on The Last Word, it seemed that it wasn't going to happen. But actually what had happened was he was just, not speaking out of turn, but he was definitely one of the only people putting his head above the parapet to say that this is actually a possibility. When the NEFIT recommendation was always that elite sport can go ahead, which encapsulates intercounty. And as long as NEFIT are saying it, then should the GAA not be proceeding with it? Like, and should the decision, like people are, like we're listening to the conversation there between Joe and Gavin, and I know a lot has changed since that conversation, but I'm not sure if there was this big call for the GAA to make. If the NEFIT, if the national health body in your country is saying that your thing that you do is safe to go ahead, then why would you go against that? Now, I know we've had very obvious examples in this country over the last couple of weeks of people going against NEFIT, but I just don't see why the GAA would go against that. Now, there are a couple of issues I would have with the national narrative.
Let's get to those issues in a little while, because Professor Mary Horgan is standing by and we've got to get to it. So 0879 180 180. Should the games go ahead, is there any way that you can see the GAA season happening? We'd love to hear from you this morning. Use the hashtag OTBM. We'll be back after this with Professor Mary Horgan.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB.
For Sterling! Raheem Sterling!
OTB live commentary. Never miss the action right here on OTB Sports Radio. Keep up to date with the latest scores on the OTB Sports app. The OTB Sports app. Live score updates straight to your phone.
And you're very welcome back. Let's turn our attention to the government's decision to move to level 5, but to allow elite sport to continue. I'm delighted to say Professor Mary Horgan is with us this morning to talk to us a little bit about what this actually means. I don't think it was that much of a surprise that they made a derogation for elite sport, but what is going to happen now is that a lot of pressure is going to come on the various sports organisations to decide whether or not they want to use that derogation. Can you maybe just talk to us to get the science behind this, Professor Horgan? How safe is it to continue elite sport while the rest of the country is at level 5?
Well, the sporting organisations, the IRFU, the GAA and other sporting organisations have put in robust structures to protect the health of the players, the backroom staff, so that the country can get on and continue to watch sports. A huge amount of effort has been put in by rugby, by GAA since the last lockdown to get protocols in place. And thankfully, there was the opportunity over the summer for inter-county games, club games, in all aspects of sports to happen. And more importantly, that our children were able to get back to cool camps. So the structures have been put in place. Certainly my involvement with the GAA has been, have been really impressed with the efforts the COVID advisory group have put in and the efforts of all the organisation to put the structures in so that they can be as robust as possible. I think it's really important for, I suppose, the health and well-being not only of players but of the country, that we can sit and watch our sports no matter what age you are. It's something we always look forward to. Is it safe for those players to play those sports? Look, there's never zero risk in anything in life, but the risk is very low. The structures that have been put in place have been absolutely always in line with public health guidelines. And it was great that NEFIT and the government supported it, gave a derogation to elite sports, including inter-county games. Is it safe? Outdoors sports is always safer than any indoor activity. The risk is low. Also, young, healthy people tend not to get hospitalised from this infection, tend in general not to get sick from it. So, I mean, you have to put all those things on the table when these decisions are made. And that was the decision of NEFIT, that in general, the risk was low. Okay. I don't know if you saw the Louth captain was on LMFM after the game at the weekend, concerned about the lack of rapid testing being carried out. Would rapid testing help in any way to alleviate any concerns that teams might have about playing these games? Well, testing strategy has been put in place. There is no benefit in doing rapid testing across inter-county players. That's a screening test. It's fraught with difficulties. There can be false positives, there can be false negatives, and it's a point in time. The position of rapid testing would be to investigate if there was a player or backroom staff that was positive, and rapid testing needs to be done in support of the public health investigation that might take place. But other than that, there is no position for rapid routine testing as a screening tool at this point in time. And again, that's in line with public health guidelines. I think it's just worth teasing that out because, a lot of people are seeing bits and pieces of stories, and they're seeing that some of the elite sports in America are doing rapid testing and everybody gets a test, they get another test the next day, and they get another test today, and they're like, oh, it's okay, grand. But actually, unless there has been a positive within the group, it's kind of pointless. Is that my unscientific way of summing it up? That really does sum it up. I mean, just routinely screening without any symptoms is not currently something that we would recommend at all. It really is based on if there's a case or there's a cluster, that the rapid testing would kick in at that time. And this is the PCR testing. The other testing, the antigen testing, is not available in this country yet, but is undergoing validation. So, I suppose when you do screening, and it's the same as any screening, whether it's screening for cancer, diabetes, or anything like that, you can pick up false positives, there can be false negatives. And the best thing to do is align with what the public health guidelines are. If you start going outside of that, it is fraught with issues that, you've deviated from what the national protocols are. And that you run into problems. All of a sudden, you have a false positive test. You test the next day and it's gone. It may not be there. And it is only a point in time when we do testing like that for screening.
Is there a more accurate testing regime that can be implemented, even if it takes a bit longer for the GAA players this winter?
The best testing still is done on either you've got symptoms or that you're a contact as deemed by public health. So the most accurate test at the moment is the PCR test, and that's the test that would be routinely available in the event of a player or backroom staff being positive. And again, we would be totally, any sports organisation would be totally in line with the public health guidelines within the country.
So it is until the antigen test comes into Ireland that you will then be able to ramp this up to another level?
Yeah, essentially the antigen test looks for different things. It looks for bits of protein of the virus. And again, it's not as sensitive as the PCR testing, but it has a place. It is more rapid, but it wouldn't pick up as many positives as you would. So while it's got a place at the moment, it's not clear what that place is.
Okay, Professor Horgan, you work in Cork University Hospital, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're an expert in infectious diseases, so you've witnessed firsthand exactly the ebb and flow of the disease and the impact that it's had on ICU. I think that's just important for anybody, because a lot of the experts that we're turning to, they become interchangeable. I don't mean that in a bad way, but people are wondering, okay, so who's Professor Horgan again? Okay, so Cork University Hospital and professor in infectious diseases, who also happens to be part of the COVID-19 advisory committee for the GAA. So if you're coming out and saying that you think actually the right thing to do is for these games to go ahead, it carries a bit more weight than ex-players. It carries a bit more weight than people who are making stuff up on the basis of stuff that they've gleaned from the internet. So what's it actually like at the front line in the hospitals at the moment? And as somebody who does see that day to day, are you happy that the derogation would be used?
Yes, I am happy that the derogation would be used, because Public Health or NEFID wouldn't do that without due consideration of all the aspects. It's important to remember that those most at risk for ending up in hospital are in vulnerable groups, which include older people, people with diabetes, people who are obese. That's the profile of the patient that ends up in hospital. So we, certainly in March, April, May, that's the patient that we saw. The important thing to remember is we know much more knowledge on the disease now than we did way back then. We know that when people come into hospital, and if they require hospitalisation, usually they get put on steroids, and that has made a huge effect on their more rapid recovery. And I think it's important to remember that we are not in the place we were, certainly from a knowledge point of view, about this infection which causes the disease COVID, compared to where we were 6 to 8 months ago. And it is very unusual to see a young, healthy person in hospital with this infection, and that's what we want to keep seeing. I think the restrictions that have been brought in are not. Case numbers aren't a great indicator, because case numbers of positive tests depends on how many tests you do. What's more important is the hospitalizations, because that indicates severity of disease. But again, I have to reiterate, those that are coming into hospital, for the vast majority of them, are in risk groups, as we had seen before.
It feels a little bit to the country like we're pushing a rock up a hill, and like Sisyphus, the rock keeps falling down. We seem to be locked in a recurring phase where it's restrictions, lockdown, get the disease under control, disease grows, restrictions, lockdown. The circuit breaker seems like a point in time as opposed to a long-term strategy. Is that fair?
Yeah, I suppose it seems as if we're back where we were in March and April. I think it's really important that the full impact of the pandemic outside COVID is brought into the equation, i.e. the effect on the mental health of people, but also the physical health, because you have to remember that COVID-19 is only a component of our large service. So we need to be mindful of the cancer treatment of diabetes, screening programs for cancers, scheduled surgery. They all need to take place too. So when we get back to this phase of level 5 restriction, I think it's important that a few things are done, that we have a means of monitoring how we bring in restrictions and whether they should be all the same throughout the country. The impact assessment it has on all other aspects of health. I'm not going to speak on the economy. I'm not an economist, I'm a doctor. But obviously a healthy economy equals a healthy population, and also ensuring that our test and tracing system is really, really robust. And we have 6 weeks to make sure that that happens, so that when we see the numbers going up again, because they will go up, that's the nature of this particular infection, we can act really quickly, but probably with less restriction, and perhaps a bit nuanced and more geographically focused.
Just one final point, Professor Horgan, then, to go back to what the Louth captain said over the course of the weekend. You've addressed the rapid testing aspect of what he said, but he also made the point that if somebody tested positive in one of these squads, say after a game, you'll have lads who are after playing a match, and this is a quote here, in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and then gone back to their homes and back all over Cork and all over Louth. He repeats, and the lack of testing, the zero testing, I just can't understand it. How big a factor is that, the idea that players can be going back into the community and having the disease unbeknownst to themselves? Or do you think that the risk is so mitigated by the fact that they're outdoors and that they're actually not that in close proximity to one another for long enough that his concerns there probably can be addressed quite easily by a public pronouncement from NEFIT or the GAA?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this happens in every walk of life, whether you're playing a sport or at work. I'm a healthcare worker, so, I have that risk every day when I go into work. But the protocols that have been put in place help public health to understand what the activity was like, and huge effort has been put on, not only on the field of play, but the use of dressing rooms, sanitising, equipment and so on, to mitigate against those issues. And at the end of the day, it's up to public health to investigate any case that might be there and institute any outbreak investigation. But to date, the number of outbreaks associated with on-field play, I'd say, are so few, if any, and the protocols for inter-county are very stringent. And I suppose there's an onus on the players, like every person in the country. This is about human behaviour. It's about looking after ourselves and ensuring that we follow what the public health guidelines to avoid that situation.
Professor Mary Horgan, thanks very much for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thank you.
OTB AM.
It's 18 minutes past 8 this morning. A reminder that Professor Mary Horgan is President of the Royal College of Physicians of Ireland and is a consultant in infectious diseases in Cork University Hospital. She's also on the COVID GAA committee. Brendan Cagney says, can this lady be brought onto the national news programmes? Clear, concise and science-based information on why top-level sport should continue if the players themselves are willing. It's 18 minutes past 8 this morning. Let's speak to Tommy Walsh this morning. Tommy, good morning to you. How are you getting on?
Hey, good morning, Ger.
What's your take on whether or not the GAA Championships should progress at this point?
Yeah, I just think it's incredibly hard to make these decisions, Ger. Like, the pressure that must be on NEFIT and the government must be absolutely unbelievable. I, for one, would hate to be, on those committees and trying to make those decisions, because no matter what way you make it, there's risks involved. If you stop the inter-county going ahead, like I know, say down in the hurling field in Tullerone there during the week, met our former chairman. absolutely love the league games on there, say the weekend, the under-21 matches on television. You know, these guys, they look forward to it all week. Next week, can't wait to read the papers this week. Looking forward to the championships. You have Clare and Limerick on Sunday, the big one. Can't wait to see the Sunday game that night, watch it on television. I know another friend of mine, his father will be in his 70s. He's been waiting since the club finished. He's been waiting the last 3 or 4 weeks for these matches. This is what these guys have to look forward to. So on one side, you know, you have that side of it, where you're looking after the mental health of people, and you're risking, I suppose, the disease, you know, maybe going into different counties. And the other side of it then is, if you don't stop it, you're looking at the mental health, the risk involved in depression and mental health of the community, and probably even from, you know, the age of 60 up, even more importantly, because, you know, they're probably around the house, they're not as involved with maybe kids and families all day, and they're probably the one thing they're looking forward to at the weekend. So there's risks involved, both sides of it, Ger. I just wouldn't like to be making those decisions. And listen, the decision is made now, and we'll have to row in behind it and try and make it work, and try and stick to the guidelines, and you know, keep it as positive as we can.
I think that's one of the reasons why we put Professor Mary Horgan on there. She is an expert in this. She does understand exactly what it's like to work in the emergency departments and see the surge and the difficulties that patients are having there in intensive care. And so hearing her come out of that environment and say to us, actually, elite sport or outdoor sport can continue. Now, maybe other sports levels should have been allowed to continue in level 5 as well. It seems like we've moved on a lot from March, for example, when the schools closed and everybody was at home and everybody was a bit grimmed out about it. This time around, schools are going to continue. It looks like underage training will be allowed to continue. So mini leagues will go on around the country, assuming that the volunteers and the clubs are happy to do so. In that environment, it's a different environment from the whole country being fully shut down with the lockdown that we had the first time round. There'll be a sense of normality around. I think that if everybody just lets a couple of days pass and calm down, then the notion of matches happening won't seem so alien. It won't seem so outrageous that there'll be matches going on, when by the weekend things change very quickly, as we've learned across this, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say here, Tommy.
They have, Ger, and I didn't realise how many leagues were allowed to stay going. We both stopped hours there, but we must look into that, see are they allowed to stay going and might start them up again. But no, looking at it, it definitely has changed. I suppose from March, we were trying to, you know, it was so new to us. I'd imagine we're trying to get rid of the virus, and we didn't know what was ahead of us. It was probably trying to bring it back to zero, but as we've learned, you know, that's probably next near impossible. So it's now learning to live with COVID until we find that vaccine. So it's trying to, you know, there's risks involved no matter what decisions you make. So it's trying to get on with it as best you can. And it seems like that sport, I know things have changed since the summer, but the sport during the summer, for a person like myself who's involved directly in it, and myself, and then looking at the kids involved as well on the coaching side of things, I thought it was brilliant. It was brilliant for parents, because they had a focus, going off training 2 or 3 times a week with their kids, get out of the house. You had the players themselves, like, you can't beat exercise, just getting up a sweat. You feel good coming back into the house, getting a shower. All those sort of feelings, that they are brilliant. And definitely I felt sport, whether it was soccer, whether it was hurling, whether it was Gaelic football, hockey, it didn't matter. Once you're getting out into the fresh air, doing things with your teammates, and I suppose, you know, pumping up a sweat, really, you just feel good coming home. And I thought it was massive for us during the summer. We're now in a different scenario, I suppose, in that we're coming into the winter months. We can't all partake in it, because it seems to be just the inter-county at the moment. So what is going to give us going forward, I suppose, it's hope. Like last year when we were involved, still hurling, we were playing matches every 2 weeks. We had no winter. And that's because you finish one match, you're getting ready for training Tuesday night, you know you have a match in 2 weeks. You weren't thinking about, is it October, is it November, is it December? And I think that's what we're hoping for out of this inter-county championships. The Munster Championship is starting this weekend. We're all looking forward to Clare and Limerick. You know, there's a few injuries involved on both sides of things, but we're all looking forward to that and see how they get on. Straight away the following week then we'll have the likes of Kilkenny and Galway, and the rest of the teams will be out. So it's just going to give probably people focus, that you're not going into work of a Monday morning, or there's 9 people out at work at the moment. There's not people at home wondering what am I going to do for the next few weeks. There's some sort of focus, there's some sort of hope that there's something on the following weekend, and I think that's probably the main reason that they're going ahead at the moment.
I think the other thing too, Tommy, is that it's not just the GAA that's going ahead, horse racing, greyhound racing. And the argument on the other side of this is professional sports, like so League of Ireland's going to go ahead and rugby's going to go ahead. Ireland's soccer internationals are going to go ahead in November as well. The counter argument is that the amateur sports are going to be going out and continuing while the rest of the country is in lockdown, and that there's an exceptional circumstance being made for the GAA. And I can see that argument too. I guess the thing here is that anybody who's very strongly on one side, like the right answers probably will emerge with hindsight, but we don't live in a hindsight world. We actually have to make decisions for now. My concern would be if we cancel all the inter-county matches now, that the circumstances to get them back, there's no guarantee that they're ever going to really change that much. There's going to be a level of infection for a long time into the future. Are we saying that we're never going to be able to have inter-county games again? Is that kind of the decision that's being made, or that people want the GAA to make this week? That seems unfair too. I
wouldn't, my own opinion would be I don't think people are even looking that far ahead. I think there's enough going on at the moment that they're not really looking that far ahead. I think it is short term at the moment, as in, let's get over this winter. Like things have changed so much, and like there's only recently enough, if we said if we got to 100 cases a week that we'd be in trouble, we'd have to go back down through the lockdowns. Now we're over the 1,000, and that wasn't so long ago. So I think it all is so short term. Like Jerry, if we had, say, 2 people on this show at the moment, and one of them was pro inter-county, right? I'd say we'd all win behind them, and they'd make unbelievable argument for the GAA to go ahead. On the other side, if you had someone that was anti the GAA going ahead and was coming out with all these reasons and a great argument why they shouldn't be going ahead, I'd say both sides, we'd row in behind both people. That's the difficulty that we're facing right now. And like we're there, and people are making those decisions for us, and we're rowing in behind them. But imagine, like, you only have to put yourselves in the shoes of the people making those decisions. Like, all the amount of different things and the different things that can go wrong, the different risks involved in both decisions, it's absolutely incredible. And I'm sure, NEFID and the government, they've looked at all sides of it. There's no easy way out. And that's the decision that is made. So I think the only thing we can do is not look back, as you said, hindsight. Forget about hindsight. Let's look forward. Right, the decision is made to go ahead with it. What can we all do to make sure that this goes off as smoothly as possible? Because that's all we can do. Like, we're living in, like, the whole world is going through this. The whole of Europe, the UK, the north, the south of Ireland. Like, this isn't just a single case in one part of the world. It's everywhere. So you just have to do the best you can, and that's all you can do.
Would you want to play this weekend, for example, Tommy, if you were still a Kilkenny hurler?
I play all the time. Everyone has different decisions to make. But I suppose my mother and father, they once they be happy, I suppose that's what you're worried about is the people close to you that you're going to be in contact with, maybe that bit older than you, so your mum and dad are always the first people that you're worried about. So once they be happy with it, I'd be happy with it, and I'd say, like, I think that the stats are out there, like, that once you're outside and you're playing the games, like, I'm not sure how many COVID-19 cases have come directly from participating on. Like we saw in the cool camps last year, like, we kind of had these decisions to make before the cool camps last year, if you can remember. I know there was very few cases in Ireland at the time, but I think, was it only one case came out of it? Because it was just outdoor, there was no indoor, it was all outdoor, just playing away. And I'm not sure how many COVID-19 cases are directly coming out of the club action this year, out on the field. I suppose the worry is what's going to happen off the field,
Yeah, and that's been the thing that they say has been the most dangerous facet of it. And the cool camps, as you say, it was marvellous actually how that managed to happen during the summer. But I think just go back to your point there about, you could have two people in a room on different sides of the fence and they could both make very reasonable arguments. That could be represented in a dressing room as well, Tommy, and it definitely seems from everybody we've spoken to, I accept that it's a small sample size, but the inter-county players we've spoken to over the last little while, they all seem very accepting of the fact that if they had a teammate who didn't want to play, they would respect that opinion, and they would respect that player's decision to not play this winter. Do you think that's fair enough?
I do, and I thought Pat Spillane made a great argument, like on the Sunday game, Sunday night. Like, in fairness to Pat, like he's very knowledgeable, he's very forthright in his views, and as far as what I could read and hear about him, like he was very much in favour of going back playing sport and getting outside and that. But on Sunday night, I thought he made great and valid points regarding, like, every person, every team is different. You don't know who is an elderly parent. You don't know who's living with someone with an underlying condition. You don't know what player works on the front line. Everybody is, everybody has worries, and everybody has, I suppose, different lives to live. So I think it's very important for the managements and the coaches of the various inter-county teams that they kind of put out that confidence in the group that, listen, guys, if there's somebody worried about maybe something at home or something in work, come to us. You don't have to come out in front of the whole dressing room. You can a quick phone call or come to me before training or after training. Just a quick word on the side to say, listen, I'm a bit worried and you don't know what to do. And I think if the management are strong enough and the county boards are strong enough to have that conversation with their players, well, then I think a player, although it's still going to be a tough decision to walk away, it's going to be his decision. And they have to make him feel confident that it's not going to affect him in any way. He's not walking away from anybody. He's not walking away from his county. He's probably braver than anyone else, on the team at the moment. That he's stepping up and saying he has these worries and he'd like to step away. So I think it's important that the management probably give that confidence to their team that if they have a worry that they can come forward.
Would you have any concern about teammates putting pressure on each other? That it's ultimately peer pressure is going to decide, I suppose. You could have a strong manager and a strong player, but if the strong player's teammates are saying, actually, you're leaving us in the lurch here, would that be a dynamic at play in some dressing rooms? Yeah,
I don't think so. I don't think so, Gerald. Like, I know probably maybe it might be difficult for a player in a dressing room where they have a great, they mightn't have won much. They're not winning All-Irelands every year, and possibly this year they have a great chance. Possibly it might be hard for that player himself to say, listen, am I going to, let these guys down? We've been training since last January. Like, we see all the inter-county players, they've been doing these, 5k runs, 10k runs, 100-metre sprints. They're watching their diets, which is very much, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it isn't too bad when you have a game on every couple of weeks. But they've been doing this since, we'll say, February, when they didn't know if there would be a championship. Sure, they didn't know till yesterday if there was going to be a championship. Their whole lives have been, geared towards this championship. I know you had the club in between, but they're still minding themselves that extra bit. And so I think it's more the pressure probably you'll put on yourself, that you want to let the lads down. We have a chance of winning maybe an Ulster, a Leinster, a Connacht or whatever this year, or an All-Ireland. But I think definitely the players won't, because, listen, every player knows at this stage how serious this COVID-19 is. Like, it's a terrible pandemic altogether, and everybody's at risk, young and old. We've seen the stats, so I don't think any pressure will. It's not like peer pressure where young lads in school or that. I think this is just a decision that maybe the pressure will be the pressure you put on yourself and maybe letting down your teammates as opposed to them putting pressure on you. Yeah, no, I think that's dead right. There was one last thing I wanted to ask you about was the way the season has ended up working out. If we do get an inter-county season, and it does go ahead now, the way that the season has been flipped this year with the club first and the inter-county second. We've been talking about this for years, Tommy, about how the situation needs to be fixed, something radical needs to happen. Unfortunately, it took, as we say, a global pandemic to make the change. But having lived through that this summer, what was your take on the whole thing? Yeah, I enjoyed it anyway, Ger. It was very intense now from a club point of view. So you'd be hoping, I suppose, if the split season does come in, say if it started in July or August, that you'd have maybe 2 or 3 months before that of playing your Burn Cup games or your, the kind of secondary and third competitions, challenge matches against teams maybe from outside the county and that. So it's a bit more relaxing, you're learning about your team. Whereas this one was just helter-skelter. It was intense week after week after week. And it probably did broaden my mind in regards, the way players we love games week after week. You love all these games. But it's tough going when it's your championship games week after week, because generally you'll find there won't be that much change in the team where there's a big loss or that. So there's probably only 18 or 19 or maybe 20 players getting game time for those number of weeks. So I'd love the split season, but while the county's going on then maybe for 2 or 3 months, you'd have your secondary competitions going on, a bit more relaxed where everyone's getting games and, you can go out and try out a few things. But I definitely think the split season, listen to what the county players are saying, listen to what the club players are saying, I think it has definitely worked, and we enjoyed it. See, what you have, Jerry, is you know when you're playing, and you have full turnouts at training. Now, I know the pandemic probably helped in that way, in that regards. There was nobody gone overseas, to the US, and there was no one gone off on holidays, and there was no one probably working up in Dublin at the time. But yeah, no, I definitely think I enjoyed it anyway, Jerry. Yeah.
I'll give you the exact wording here from the government website about the matches. Government.ie, training and matches. No training or matches should take place with the following exceptions. Non-contact training can continue for school-aged children outdoors in pods of 15. So that was what I was saying about the mini-leagues can go on.
So the leagues, you're telling me the leagues aren't going to go ahead, so is it?
So mini-leagues where we're from is the under 10 in inter-club, just in the club itself. So you can't play other clubs.
Yeah, but I wonder, can you play inter-club, I wonder?
As in,
let's look into that.
Two. I mean, no matches can take place. So you can have a training session with.
No, there's no point having a training session if you know a match there.
Non-contact matches.
No, that's not going to work around here. I don't like doing it myself, so I'm not going to put the kids through it.
That's fair enough. What teams are you training at the moment?
I'm not training any teams, but we've the under sevens, we'll say, during the summer. That's all finished now. But we play little leagues, between, say, what age would it be? To be probably between 8 and 12, 13. So it's, as you said, it's the leagues within your own club, but the young lads love them.
Yeah, it's kind of street leagues. That's we used to play street leagues.
That's what it is, exactly, street leagues. But they love them. They absolutely love them. And we had to call them off there, obviously, when a few weeks ago when the thing started rising again. But, every time, because I'm at home now working away, so I collect Pippin every day in school at 2 o'clock, and the young lads are the league starting back, or they're starting back. But I thought today I'd be able to give the good news, but no.
Not quite.
We'll have to leave it for another while.
My happiest memories of playing as a kid are actually the street leagues, because there was proper intense rivalry between... we were on the Dublin Road and we had a brilliant team, it turned out, versus other parts of the town. It was like, they're literally the happiest memories I have of playing club football.
Yeah, brothers versus brothers, and you have one mother shouting for one young lad, the father shouting for the other. You can create wars too. I did when you say it, I have one memory of the street leagues when we were their class leagues, whatever you call them back then, and we got to the semi-final. There only was 4 teams, but I suppose it was probably seeded. So we're in the semi-final, but one of the main players in the other team was suspended for the semi-final because he cursed during class. So we were the half favourites going to win the semi-final, and then the day before, it was on Saturday, there was Saturday morning leagues, and the Friday anyway, the player from the other team went up. He went up to the teacher and said sorry. So the teacher let him play the following day in the best. So that's my memory, terrible memory of street leagues.
It's like the prodigal son coming back and they're killing the fatted calf. God damn that prodigal son. Anyway. So listen, Tommy, to wrap it up, if Neffet say it's okay to play, that's the main thing. They're the ones who are advising on public health, and if they're saying that it's okay for the inter-county game to go ahead, we should try and get the games away.
Yeah, exactly, Gerard. And what I would run behind that and say is that I wouldn't say, listen, this is their call and they made it, so let's do it. I'd say the decisions they have to make are incredible. They're so tough. Would you make it? Would I make it? Would your friends make it? Would your mum and dad make it? There are incredible tough decisions with risks either side. So listen, the decision is made now. Listen, there's no right or wrong way of doing it, but it's made now, and I think we should just go in behind it and try our best to work with the guidelines and make sure that it is a success, you know.
Okay, very reasonable. Tommy, great to talk to you again. Thanks a million for joining us.
Okay, Jerry. See you all.
Tommy Walsh there, and hopefully we'll get to talk some hurling soon enough with Tommy if things go ahead. OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Very reasonable there from Tommy Walsh. Not the way that this debate is happening online, Eoin, or is happening on our YouTube comments, or it's just happening generally. Like, as he points out, you put two people in the room, they're going to disagree on this.
Yeah, and you can make valid arguments on both sides of the fence on this as well, which is kind of the remarkable thing. Like, even if we just kind of park the whole should it go ahead, should it not go ahead for one moment here, I definitely think that there has been a little bit of an overblowing of the narrative about how much of a lift this will give the nation and all that sort of thing. Like, I know a lot of people will have a huge amount of distraction in a very positive way over the next couple of weeks and months, and that is a positive. But the only reason that the games are happening is because the organisations who run the games want the games to happen, and they want the competitions to occur, and they want to crown an All-Ireland champion in this case. The idea that this is being done for the mental health of the nation, I think that's a little bit overblown. And I know nobody this morning is suggesting that. Like Tommy, in fairness, said to him that there are two sides to this argument, and you can see why people will say that they won't want to go ahead. But I just think we need to be careful about us saying, the country will get a lift from all of this, when we are sports fans, when we are GAA fans. Like, GAA is my favourite sport. I will get a huge boost from watching games over the next couple of weeks, but not everybody will get that. Not everybody is a sports fan. What about the people who have different pastimes that have been shut down and don't have any signs of life over the next couple of months? Like, those people will struggle, and to say that sport going ahead will be a national boost for their mental health, I think that is just a tad misplaced or a little bit disingenuous at worst.
But so, did you not get a boost at the weekend watching the games?
I did.
Okay.
But that's me. Like,
okay,
I'm thinking...
so loads of people will. A million people watch the hurling final and a million people watch the football final. Like, it's not nothing. That's what I'm saying. It's like, so not everybody, granted, but there's literally nothing you can do that is going to give everybody a boost. Perhaps, maybe if you literally give everybody €1,000, like Donald Trump did, that would give everybody a boost for about 3 days until the money is gone and everybody's sitting there going, Jesus, did I waste my money or not? Apart from that, I don't really know anything else that you can do on a mass scale to give some people some comfort. I mean, obviously, there are loads of things you can do. You can guarantee housing. You can increase the COVID unemployment payments. You can say, we've got this on an economic level, and you can give people comfort at that level. This is separate to that, right? And I accept that. But in terms of big, broad brushstrokes that you can do that will actually generally help the mood of a lot of people, helping soccer fans, helping rugby fans, helping racing fans, helping GAA fans, that's not a bad idea, is it?
In fairness, if it's that or nothing, what are you going to do? Like, you're right. You're not going to be able to please everyone. What I am conscious of is that there may be a sort of view here that the GAA are getting off lightly here, or something, that their industry hasn't been shut down, like, say, certain cultural organisations in this country have been shut down. And there might be a tone from non-sports fans that would suggest that we're not all in this together. And that was certainly the feeling in March. And I'm just conscious of that point of view. I feel guilty on one level, I think, is how I actually feel this morning, that there's, first of all, as Tommy points out there, nobody's fully sure whether or not this should be happening. Nobody can be 100% certain. So while you have those doubts in your mind, there is always going to be a little bit of guilt when you are a fan of the thing that gets to proceed relatively unscathed over the next couple of months. So I think that's what informs it. And also as well, the fact that you've got a quarter of inter-county players who say they don't want to play. Now, that could change if there is more education over the next little while. I mean, listening to Mary Horgan this morning, if you're an inter-county player, I wonder, does that figure drop a little bit? Just speculation, but it might do. Certainly when it came to the testing, when I listened to the Louth captain over the course of the weekend, I thought, this is not good. This is not a good look for the GAA. And when she explained rapid testing there and how it's not overly trustworthy, that changed my view as well. And I keep flip-flopping between what I think is right and what I think is wrong. And I think that's representative of the whole country at this point.
Okay, let's move on, because our next guest, I'm sure, will have a view on all of the stuff that we're talking about here. Ken Robinson is the CEO of DCU Sport, where they have the elite level gym and they have the general gym in DCU Sport. But Ken is also a highly qualified coach. He works with the Dublin ladies football team. He's been part of that setup with Mick Bowen for the last 4 years. Ken, good morning to you. How are you?
Ger, good morning. I've just finished in the gym there myself, and I have to say, I'm actually sad. It's disappointing. So, yeah, that's what I'm tinged with. That's my first emotion this morning.
As in, there is an immediate sense of loss that you're not going to be able to do this 2 days' time.
Well, yeah, and you know what? I mean, it's not about being self-serving. This is about, I was looking at a queue of our members coming in this morning, and our oldest member using the gym here is 92. She comes into the pool, she comes in her electric scooter, and she uses the pool. We have members in their 80s, 70s, 60s, the students. And look, let me just preface it all by saying we need to find a way to live with COVID risks for the next circa 12 months, you know, as we wait for safe and effective vaccines. We know that. This is not self-serving going, you know, flip COVID, we want the gyms open. That's not what it's about. We know we have to live with COVID risk. But the one thing I would say is, in the last number of months since we opened, and not just DCU Sport, Ireland Active have lobbied for all the gyms with standards out there that have opened in a safe and effective way. I mean, for example, we've got a 30,000 square foot gym. We were having 66 people per hour maximum coming in. There was social distancing. Members were cleaning equipment. In each of our locker rooms, they had a pod, so you had 7 max in a locker room. So the members were saying to us, never felt safer, really confident, and well done. And that's many gyms around the country. And we're disappointed that, you know, all gyms or all activity was just gone. We were ready to hit a button this morning, Ger, if it came through, that we could go outdoor classes, a class every hour outdoors. That would have been a lovely compromise, because from a mental wellness point of view, from a community point of view, this is about belonging. I'll give you just a quick stat, if you don't mind. IRSA, which is the International Health and Racquet Sports Association worldwide, the 5 top reasons that people choose their gym is, number 1, atmosphere, 2, social belonging, 3, personality of people in the gym, 4 is class, and 5 is cleanliness. Now, if you're hitting all those buttons, the mental wellness and community aspect is absolutely huge. And that sense of belonging, that sense of purpose for people is now going to be gone.
I have to agree. I think it's a very blunt instrument approach to this. And, you know, we tried the county lockdowns, but county borders are completely manufactured. They're not a real thing at all. It's kind of something that we inherited and have used for sports reasons. It didn't seem like we have tried an articulate way of tackling the issues.
Yeah. I mean, for example, a very easy way to say it, if somebody was actually negative about gyms, they could turn around and say, okay, let's have a member per square foot. That was IRSA's recommendations. So let's say it was a member for every 10 square feet. So therefore, you'd know that's your standard. So it would be very easy to police it and say, okay, what's your square footage? How many members are you allowing access? Because I have to say, the other thing as well, Ger, members are intelligent. People are intelligent. And people's first point of call in Maslow's hierarchy is self-preservation and security. If they felt, oh, I'm not going to go to that gym. I spoke to somebody the other day that went to a gym and didn't feel quite safe in it. I mean, size is good. Small gyms, if they're kept, their numbers good, are also good. This is not about size or about, you know, we were policed by government, we were policed by standards, we were policed by our own university, health and safety, who support us so well. So, and then the ultimate policing are your members. If members don't feel safe, they're discerning enough to go, well, I'm not going in there. Whereas we had to increase our hours, bring back more staff, and have the place open in a safe and meaningful way.
Was the business sustainable, you know, independent of being the fact, and maybe it's difficult to divorce the fact from your student gym as well, like, are gyms sustainable under the regulations as they were this week before level 5?
It's very easy for me in a university setting to be cozy and go, oh yes, but if I was KO or private gym, the answer is no. Unless you were a small gym, with low overheads, and your landlord was going to be very, very, accommodating, and that you had yourself and one other staff member. But when you go into the running costs of a gym, the running costs of a pool, all of those fixed costs, whether you have one member or 1,001 members coming in a week, you've got your fixed overheads, and therefore, no, not sustainable. But the other thing I would say is, and Ireland Active through Con McCluskey have done a great job on this, lobbying government. I think this could be a fantastic crossroads in this respect. If the government were to realise that gym activity, walking, swimming are the three top activities in the country. Now, it's interesting that the trend there is they're all individual, because people are flexible, they've got time to do it. But if they were to approach the standard, good standard gyms out there, and there are many. I was talking to Conor Mortimer the other day, running a great show in Glenroyal. Kevin Doyle running a great show in West Park. Alan Leach down in Westwood, running great gyms. If they were to say, you know what, we've an opportunity here to have a conduit and a channel for people's health and well-being, and maybe give people a tax back on people going to the gym. That's now not been any way opportunistic. Let's look at the great channel geographically that we have throughout the country. And if you were in rural Ireland, your gym, and I'm going to not compare, but your pub, your church, whatever it might be, your GAA, they're social hubs that really are huge for people's mental wellness.
I totally understand that, and I think that when we saw the ESRI's exercise monitor come out after the first period of lockdown and the gender gap had closed, it was clear that there's an opportunity here for us to look at the data that has emerged from the last 6 months and really change how we invest in sport, how we divvy up the funding going forward. But that's probably a question for another day. I know clearly in the introduction I mentioned that you're involved with the Dublin women's football team, so clearly you're a GAA person as well. There's a lot of antipathy out there this morning towards the notion that the GAA have got somehow special treatment in this, and that they don't deserve to be allowed to run their championships off, that it's too dangerous, that ultimately they're going to be forced to not run their championships off because of public opinion. What's your take on all that, Ken?
You know something, Ger, and I don't mean to be flippant when I say this, when we read back in history about the Civil War and there was two sides, I've never seen anything living in real time that's like a civil war, because people will have differing opinions from the same household, let alone from different parts of the country. I don't think it's a war. It's a war against COVID, not to be cliched, but I think we can't bash the GAA. If I wasn't involved in the GAA, I would be saying, wasn't it wonderful to sit at home Saturday night and watch Dublin and Meath? Or, watch the under-20 semi-finals on Saturday, the final coming up this Saturday, Galway and Dublin. Laois playing Dublin hurling this week, Kilkenny playing, Cork playing. We love sport, and viewing it, and I think is absolutely crucial. Imagine this. Imagine if you were in a small house in rural Ireland with nothing going on around you, your pub closed, your church closed. My God almighty, to be able to watch a really entertaining game on TV. And I don't buy this, it's behind closed doors. We've watched rugby behind closed doors. We've watched, soccer behind closed doors. We would watch anything. You can enjoy it. So I don't think we should be bashing GAA. I think we should be saying, isn't it wonderful that the tide is rising everywhere, and the more we can have, the better.
I guess it comes back to your whole point at the start about living with COVID, and either we get a little bit more nuanced at it or we don't, and we continue to have this blunt instrument of a lockdown. Like in 6 weeks' time, if the figures go down, great, and then there'll be a month of everybody going mad and the figures will go back up, and then we have another lockdown, and then...
Absolutely, the yo-yo effect is there. And Ger, I'm not expert enough to be able to give stats on it, but you know what? Other illnesses and other critical situations haven't gone away during COVID. This is not in a COVID embargo where everything else is sort of staying neutral. Like, we buried a lovely young lad last week who took his own life in our club, and I know I lost staff members that couldn't afford to live in Dublin anymore because of the cost of living. And, there's so much stuff going on out there from a mental wellness point of view. Cancer still exists. Heart attacks still exist. The flu this time of the year would be, I'd say, at a high number. So we do have to get robust and live with it. But I think we can't throw out the baby with the bathwater, to use that cliche. We need to look at this sensibly and say, what do people need? And we're social animals. We want to be involved with people. You know, people often say during this, we have an online presence. So we're starting our online classes today. And members reaching out to, whether it's Emma or John teaching, is wonderful. But the other thing as well, people would say, oh, you know, you can have your home gym and be on your own. At the end of the day, you want scenery in the stadium, you want socialization in the gym, and it is that social aspect that's the real mental wellness boost.
Can we leave it there? Ken Robinson, the CEO of DCU Sport, thanks very much for joining us this morning. It's another perspective on what's going on at the moment. A reminder, OTB AM is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, Start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. I was talking about the ESRI Sports Monitor there and the massive gap that closed between males and females participating in sport. This was back in April, I think, was the last set of figures. I haven't seen updated ones, but it all feeds in nicely to the 20 by 20 campaign. The 20 by 20 campaign is coming to an end. It was a campaign started to try and increase the coverage of women's sport by 20% by the year 2020, to increase participation and to increase attendance. Obviously, attendance has gone out the window because of COVID, but notwithstanding that, there's definitely been, I would say, a significant change in people's attitude towards women's sport over the course of the campaign, partly fuelled by the campaign, but also partly fuelled by the fact that maybe people are waking up to the whole notion of women playing sport and it being televised, being an important part for our society. So to mark the conclusion, there is a virtual event tomorrow. That's Wednesday, October the 21st, and you're all invited. It's Legends of Irish and International Sport, an incredible guest list: Martina Navratilova, Ada Hegerberg, Rachel Blackmore, Brian O'Driscoll, Sonia O'Sullivan, and more. There'll be debates and discussions about what we all want for the future for women in sport in Ireland to be. You can check out Think It, Ask It. That's the hashtag, or the 20 by 20 social media channels for details on how to register. OTB Sports is, of course, a proud partner and supporter of 20 by 20. Right, for the real news out of last night's Level 5 briefing, Power Ranking Tuesdays got the go-ahead. This next slot is our Power Ranking slot, which has become known as Two Pricks, One List.
BOLLOCKS. Go with fancy dance. Get the simple things wrong. A nice tea. There's only one answer for that.
Where did this ferocious determination out there today come from? The media. Every one of them wrote us off.
The article was rubbish.
You know, it's not my fault that we haven't beat Kerry in a big game in Croke Park.
I'm going to lose all my life today.
It is time for the Power Ranking with Eoin Sheahan. Eoin Sheahan's Power Ranking. How did that happen? You're a clown. Right, Eoin, give us the countdown from 32 to 1. I was, sorry. Take it away, Eoin.
In at number 32 in our most correct and perfect power rankings, as ever, is London, not taking part in the rest of the season, so they're rooted to the bottom of the table. Waterford rooted to number 31, didn't play last week as they were due to play London. Right, at 30 then, another non-mover in Sligo, beaten by Carlow last weekend. Then at 29, we have Antrim plummeting because they are the Liverpool of Gaelic football, having the capability of conceding 7 goals in a single match, plummeting down the rankings, as I say, after their hammering at the hands of Wicklow. At number 28, we have Carlow. Their win against Sligo was not enough to move them up the list this week. They went the other way, in fact. At number 27, we've got Louth, who are rock bottom of Division 3 and can't stop losing. At 26, we've got Wexford, a big rise for them this week after beating fellow promotion chasers Limerick. And it is Limerick who just edged them ahead now at 25, but they are down a spot. And their promotion hopes taking a little bit of a wobble after that defeat. 24 then, Wicklow up 4. One of the big winners of the week, banging in 7 goals against Antrim at an empty Fortress Aughrim, which proves that you Wicklow fans, you deserve absolutely no credit for the creation of said fortress down through the years. At number 23, we have Leitrim, who couldn't field the team at the weekend due to COVID, proving a long-held theory that the Leitrim senior football team contains the entire 18 to 35-year-old male population of that county. Number 22, we have Offaly, who were beaten by Tip at the weekend. At number 21, we have Longford, who were beaten comfortably by Derry. And at 20, we have Tip, who won the global pandemic GAA transfer window because their marquee signing was Michael Quinlivan, who they got on loan from travelling the world and having the time of his life in Australia. At number 19, we have Derry, who beat Longford well. At 18, we have Fermanagh, and this is where things get complicated because who knows who is truly better than who in Division 2. You know, it takes a big person to admit that they don't know everything, and sometimes even the most robust Gaelic games mathematical modelling can only account for so much of the randomised shit show that Division 2 is. So let's get into some Division 2/3 teams here. At 17 we've Down and non-mover, same at 16, which is Westmeath. At 15 we have your boys Kildare. At 14 we have Clare, and at 13 we have Laois. I think I've got that order right, but do I really have a notion? Not at all, because it's Division 2. Who the hell knows? At number 12 is Meath, a Division 2 team, let's face it, despite all the protestations of their fans. At 11 we have Cavan, despite their bad loss to Kildare at the weekend. At 10 then, we have Cork. Cork are kind of like the Will Ferrell growing up in the North Pole in Elf, because they are very much the big fish in the small Division 3 pond. At number 9, we have Monaghan, who lost to Kerry despite the efforts of cool new Impact sub Conor McManus. Keep an eye on that promising talent. At number 8, we have Armagh. Their promotion tilt took a hit last weekend, which shows the madness of 2020, because Kieran McGeeney's biceps aren't already in Division 1, which is lunacy, let's face it. At 7 then, we have Roscommon, up 2 spots, as good as promoted and doing it in style. Anthony Cunningham is an interpreter and a set of glasses away from being the GAA's Marcelo Bielsa. At 6, we have Galway. Their defence on Sunday, like Dolphins and Kerry, absolutely nowhere to be seen. At 5, we have Mayo. And this is obviously going to be the year that Mayo win the All-Ireland, given they won't be able to celebrate properly. And to make matters worse for them, you can still have 10 people at a funeral, which leaves the window open for them to be cursed once again when they're bringing Sam Maguire over to Shannon. At number 4, we have Tyrone. You can't lose a game of shadow boxing, but that is exactly what Tyrone did on Sunday. At 3, we have Donegal. Number 3 is exactly the same number of intercounty careers that Pater Mogan ended with a shimmy before scoring their opening goal on Sunday. And at number 2, a non-mover in Kerry. Could have beaten Monaghan by a healthy amount, but it was only 3 points in the end. And I can therefore deduce that, yeah, sure, aren't Dublin still the best team in the country? And there they are at number 1, despite not looking overly convincing against Meath. The Dubs, your number 1 team, and there are your power rankings.
So just to go back to Kildare, who beat Cavan but didn't replace them or didn't get close to them, are still 4 spots behind them in Division 2. A ludicrous assertion. Here's the thing. It turns out your power rankings, up to now, I've always thought you need to rely on tradition and take a long form view and put loads of information into the algorithm. But actually, what has happened is that there's been an explosion. The whole world has got turned upside down on its axis, and we need to start from day dot. And from day dot, your power rankings, I think, are incorrect, because actually the post-COVID world is an entirely different world to the pre-COVID world. And what we need to do is examine the evidence of our eyes. And it's clear the best team in the country by a country mile at the moment is Mayo. So Mayo need to be number 1 in your rankings. I would have Kerry number 2 for playing within themselves and swatting aside the challenge of Monaghan. I'd probably have Dublin 3rd or 4th at the moment. Just not quite sure. We don't know what they're... You were saying, Tommy said he's never seen them have so many balls turned over. That's not the number 1 team in the country.
It will be the number 1 team in the country come the end of the year. They're still early on in their path in this, and you can't discount everything before the pandemic. How can you do that? That is ridiculous. Yes, it's been a long layoff. I accept that the new information is probably more prescient than ever right now, but the pre-pandemic information that we've got is important, and that is why we don't just have a list of the best teams from 1 to 32 as a result of last weekend. You can't. Are you honestly making a case that Dublin aren't even a top 2 team?
I'm making the case at the moment that there's a change that has happened, and that the evidence of right now suggests that Mayo are the best team in the country. I'm waiting to see exactly what emerges from the Donegal-Tyrone teams over the next 2 weeks. I really can't wait now, assuming this all go ahead, for that game to happen. I would be concerned if I was a Dublin fan about... The counter-argument, of course, is that Dublin actually have such an easy wind-up to an All-Ireland semi-final, where they've literally played their hardest game that they're going to play between now and an All-Ireland semi-final. I don't know who they've got in the last round of the league. I momentarily had a brain fart.
Galway.
Okay, well, so look, that'll, who knows? Maybe Galway are trying to throw everybody off the scent themselves by just, as you said, not having a defence in action. Look, The truth is, we don't know where Dublin are, but we do know that Kerry have emerged with a new superstar in their forward to supplement their existing superstar and have an amazing quality of bench to inject into that team. And for all of your Yarraing are the supersonic team of the day.
I actually think Kerry are going to win the All-Ireland. I think if I'm making a prediction right now, I think that they're going to win the All-Ireland.
So then they should be number one in your power rankings. That's the whole point.
No, no. Remember that I said last week that we're changing this a little bit, that I don't want them to be as predictive as they were last year. Otherwise, it's just a list of who do you think is going to win the All-Ireland. I think this team's going to win the All-Ireland, and that's boring. What I'm basing this on is fact, and I'm basing this on the fact that Dublin have won 5 All-Irelands in a row, and the evidence that we have so far doesn't suggest that Kerry are going to usurp them. That is my personal hunch, and I want it to be about more than that, and I think that Dublin still deserve to be number one. I just want to get back to your point that you think Mayo are honestly the best team in the country. Like, how can you come up with that on the basis of one game?
Well, last week they were the best team. These are your power rankings after last week's performances. For me, that's what the power rankings are. After the current performances, what's the story? Who's the best? That was an astonishing performance in terms of betting in new talent, getting the best out of your old players, and more importantly, your old players all being fit for the first time collectively since I actually can't remember.
Since they got hammered by Dublin in the last year's semi-final.
No. Half the team was like coming back from long-term injury, not fully fit. Did Diarmuid O'Connor play fully fit in that game? Was Killian fit? Was Lee Keegan fit last year in that game? I don't think they were. Not that we would got proper information out of these counties about the quality of relative health compared to other times of their careers, because that's obviously, for whatever reason, seems to be a secret in GAA world. But I just think the Dubs have a bit of a distance to claw back to the level that we know they're at in high summer, when they've been able to pinpoint their points of the year where they're going to get fully fit, have a Super 8 campaign to warm up, pick your best team maybe, or pick your best team to finish matches with because they have that luxury. This year that luxury is gone. They had to call for the cavalry last year and in Diarmuid Connolly, and they needed it. They also absolutely needed Jack McCaffrey to be sensational, and that's gone. Like O'Gara driving standards in training, Brogan driving standards in training, suddenly that's gone, and it's like, this is the year to catch Dublin, 100%. This is absolutely the year to catch Dublin. Kieran Archer's still playing under 20s, not going to be available for them. Maybe he will be available for them, actually. Probably will be in later stages of the season if they need him, because who knows if that game's actually going to go ahead at the weekend as well. I don't know. I just think that I agree with you. I think Kerry are going to win.
And I think that will manifest itself as the year goes on. I still just don't think that there is enough evidence to say that they aren't still the best team in the country, because the most recent battle they have is that incredible draw in Croke Park at the start of the year, where David Clifford scored that late free kick. And that Dublin team, of course, if it's an older team, might have deteriorated a little bit over the course of a global pandemic and having a break. But I think the fact that if you're looking at an ageing squad and maybe an ageing defence in Dublin's case, the fact that they've had such an amount of time off can only be a positive. That the likes of Philly McMahon, and we don't know what's going to happen with Johnny Cooper's injury, as you say, who knows whatever happens with a GAA injury. But I think Philly McMahon is a really good example of somebody who's used the pandemic really well and looks back to some semblance of the McMahon we knew from 5 years ago, and who will be a starter when everybody's available in this Dublin team. But without Eoin O'Gara and Bernard Brogan driving standards on, you still have the likes of Kevin McManaman to drive standards on. Also, you can drive standards on by having an incredible generational talent between the sticks as your leader and as your captain. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be an impact sub or somebody who's sitting on the bench to drive those standards. Yes, it helps, but I still think that they're operating off maniacal levels in the bunker in Dublin. And I still think culturally they are the team to be caught. I think players-wise, the gap is closed, certainly. I think definitely Kerry's players are closing in on the talent that Dublin have, but culturally, that is the big question. And when it comes down to the white heat of a champion or of an All-Ireland final and the scores are level, who have you got? You're picking Dublin. You're still picking Dublin in those situations.
Maybe not.
And until I see evidence of them losing in those sort of situations or looking a bit more fragile, that's all I'm asking for. Just give us a crack here. Just show us something. Then the power rankings may change. I honestly think your Mayo point is ridiculous for the time being. I think Galway's defence, as we said, were at sea. I think up front they were missing their 3 best forwards. and they couldn't put much of a dent into the scoreline in the other direction.
How much are they going to have of those three best forwards for the rest of the year, though? That's like, here's the thing. My point about Mayo, I wouldn't have them number one. I would probably have them number three at this stage, because they did play a meaningful game, and they do have their best players, their oldest players, fully fit collectively for the first time that we've seen in a long time. They've also decided that Aidan O'Shea's best position is full forward. Listening to Kieran Donaghy the other day, it was like, okay, that is actually fundamentally important. They've discovered something at 11 which they haven't had before, and they have a youthful positivity around the middle third of the field, which up to this point had been essentially the old stagers trying to wrestle one last tour of duty out of their experience. And now all of a sudden it's a brand new midfield. So the Owl lads can either start and be replaced by incredible levels of energy, or the Owl lads can come on and steal the game for them if you need them to. That's a heady concoction. I didn't realise that this new generation of Mayo players were going to bed in so quickly, and that you were going to get that old player kick. Like, I think that's fundamentally a very important aspect. And you've got a manager who's been around and has failed in the past with this group of players, but who has seen what it takes to be successful and has got like razor thin margins of success and failure behind him. So I think that, like, Mayo last year looked like a beaten docket in the championship when it came down to it. This year, in the short sprint of 5 weeks, 6 weeks that we're going to have for this year's championship, that's an unbelievably potent and dangerous collection that they have now. And I think it deserves far more respect. And I think everybody's like, oh, it's only the league, don't read too much into it. It's a record-breaking score. It's an absolute annihilation. Like, you can't just lick that off a stone. And it was, you know, Galway weren't up for it. Like, Galway, we'd seen Galway might be training too hard, but their spirit was snapped. Like, their neck was broken early in that game. I don't know. I think that deserves some credit.
Well, I think that the kick from the old players is the most important thing you say there. And if I'm going to make the point about Dublin's wizened veterans benefiting from a pandemic, then of course the same logic applies to Mayo. And they have arguably, their older players are arguably more important to them. And when I say the older players, I'm talking about Aidan O'Shea, who isn't that old, but people who've got like a lot of miles in the clock. You're like, Keegan is right in that bracket. You're going to have Higgins coming back as well. And who knows what of the giants in midfield are actually going to appear come championship time in a couple of weeks as well. And if they've used the time to rest up and actually tune themselves back up for 1 or 2 more seasons, then of course they're a frightening proposition, because they have what Galway don't have, they have what Tyrone and Donegal don't have. They have the ability to put one of the best teams of all time right to the sword and almost beat them. And I know it's the word almost is the key thing here, but nobody's pulled it off except for that one result in 2014. It's as good as you're going to get in experience, and Kerry and Mayo are the only 2 teams to have that. People always say that Mayo get overrated when it comes to these rankings, but actually they get such a boost because of what they've shown in the past. And last year, let's not forget, was a little bit of an example of that. Like, I know they lost in Connacht to Roscommon, who I believe will also be a huge factor in this year's Connacht Championship. But that win over Galway in the backdoor last year, I mean, I know Galway are a much better proposition this year if you forget last weekend, but still, that was a game that Galway, if they really wanted to say that they're ahead of Mayo now, needed to win. It was knockout. This wasn't like Connacht Championship and with the safety of with a safety net for them. This is when it really mattered. The Mayo beat them last year, and they managed to do that against Donegal as well in the last game of the Super 8s in Castlebar. So there were 2 huge performances from them last year that was a bit of a throwback to whatever 2017. And because they got hammered by Dublin, that's what we remember. That doesn't mean that they can't recapture 2 of those great moments from 2019 again this year, but run Dublin closer. So while I agree with you in a lot of what you're saying, I do think that they're not a top 2 team.
We'll see. What about Tyrone? Are you saying that there was nothing that we can really discern from the Donegal-Tyrone game because they're due to play each other again, or like?
No, they moved. Donegal overtook Tyrone in this week's rankings, and like, I mean, you made the point last week about Colin McShane, and it's going to be someone that they miss a lot, and he was the guy who almost got him into an All-Ireland final last year. You're thinking to yourself, what could have been with himself and Conor McKenna, because I was actually quite impressed with McKenna at times on Sunday. But the problem is when you've got a focal point like that, it's quite easy to swallow him up. If you've got 2 of those sort of players in your full forward line, then you're a different proposition. The wild card is how they play Matty Donnelly this year, and if they can get him as an inside forward alongside McKenna, of course they've got a chance of beating Tyrone in that Ulster Championship game. But on the evidence of last Sunday, I think Donegal have the edge over them and will win that championship game. just the strength in forwards and the array of talent they have up front, I think will see them through.
That is going to be brilliant. Like, that is a proper heavyweight tussle. We've been asking you this morning, should the inter-county GAA season continue under level 5? You can WhatsApp us, 0879 180 180, and the Twitter poll is 43% yes, 57% no. We didn't leave a room for don't know on that. But that 43% is up from, what was it, 20-something last night on the Claire Byrne show. So I think, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next 24 hours or so. The GAA are due to meet, the GPA are due to meet today as well. What do you think the GPA are saying to their players, Eoin?
Well, I presume it's more of a conversation, and it's more of what are they asking their players, isn't it? With regards to, do you want to play? And of course, they released the results last week about that, and I'm actually quite surprised that a quarter of players just don't want to play straight up or don't feel comfortable playing. I thought that was actually quite a high number. And what do they then have to say to them after that? Well, I guess they just have to instruct them that it is their own ability to walk off a panel, or if an entire panel doesn't feel comfortable, for them to pull out of the championship. It is their role to, I guess, advise. It is their role to engage and to canvass opinion within the organisation. Like, do they have the ability to actually present to their players, these are the reasons why you should not play championship, or these are the reasons why you should play championship? I don't think so. And I think even if they did have like a sub-council within the GPA of medical experts, they might come up with the same thing that NEFIT are coming up with, which is the championship is safe to go ahead.
All right, 15 minutes past 9 here this morning. Still plenty to come. We're going to be hearing from Mick Galwey, the Irish women's national team, and talking football with Graham Hunter. Ireland playing Ukraine on Friday, of course, trying to qualify for the Euros. We're going to hear from Rihanna Jarrett a little bit later on. We'll be back after the ad break. Keep an eye out for our new rugby anthem to celebrate its return after a long 7 months. Mario Rosenstock has written a song to celebrate. Check it out and share the positive energy at energia.ie/rugby-anthem.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
The Sunday Paper Review on OTB.
And it got me thinking, I think, about a lot of the arguments that are made, Joe, around the social value of sport. And I think you'll see a theme, and many of the listeners will see a theme in the newspapers today about why, on the one hand, sport should be given an exemption because the social value and all of the things it brings. And this is what Eamon Sweeney is saying. But we need a bit of humility here, I think.
Digesting the best stories on the back pages every Sunday afternoon on OTB Sports Radio. Tune in 24/7 on the OTB Sports app.
Okay, Paulie, let's do this.
Get stuck in, Brian.
Memories racing through my mind. Drop goal slam 2009. My soft hands, my incomparable flair. Highlights dancing through my hair.
My line-out takes, the stadium rocks. Donegal Callahan's bright red jocks.
Soldier Field, the figure 8. All Blacks heads on a plate. They said our chances were 1 in 10, so we got them at home and we did them again. Johnny Sexton, your baby face.
Drop goal France, outer space.
Grand Slam England, what's the crack? We love those memories, we want them back. When death flies high, we will sing the fields of Athenry. 'Cause I know when we're about to be elbow bumping with Michael D.
Yes, indeed.
Then we're back.
Now we're back.
Yes, we're back. Yes, we're back. Yep, we're back. Positive energy radiating from me.
6 months, we needed patience, but now it's time for the Guinness Six Nations.
Savage, proud, ready, able. Put the fear of God into the top of the table.
Electricity, light a spark.
From the Aviva Stadium to Energia Park.
New coach, brand new blood. Rob Kearney, out to stud. Rory Best became a farmer. Now it's time for Jordan Larmour.
Sexy's back, he's got the goo. Says he'll play till he's 52.
When death flies high, we will sing the fields of Athenry. 'Cause I know when we're about to be elbow bumping with Michael D.
Yes, indeed.
Then we're back.
we're back.
Yes, we're back. Yes, we're back. Yep, we're back. This has been an GAA production, overflowing with positive energy. Thank you.
Into sports.
20 yards out, Ursa shoot, Dungeon! Oh, what a goal from Fabinho! Wow!
Then get into the all-new OTB Sports app.
I think when he apologises to me, I probably will say hello to him, yeah. No.
Videos, sports news, live scores, interviews.
If Fabregas is going to come up to me in the street and give me some of the mouth that he would have given me on a football pitch, what do you do? We get a slap.
Plus, exclusive content on the OTB Podcast Network. The biggest names in sports. Ready when you are. Search OTB Sports on your app store and download it now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.
At 20 minutes past 9, pardon me, let's turn our attention to the Champions League, and I'm delighted to say Graham Hunter is back. Graham, how are you?
Morning, Diamond. I'm fine.
Football in England has been very weird since the return. Shocking results. Aston Villa are suddenly the best team in the world. Only team in the top 5 leagues to have won every single game.
Sorry, Chair. The line crackled there.
Football.
What did you say about Aston Villa? Do you want to say it again? No, just the Aston Villa bit.
Best team in the world.
Come on, sharpen up, waking up, Chair, baby.
Ross Barkley, who knew he could shoot? Come here. What's going on in Spain? It seems like they're all playing out boring 0-0 draws. Or no, in fairness, both Real Madrid and Barcelona are beaten on the same day for the first time in a long time at the weekend. But it hasn't been crazy 4-all, 7-2, 8-0. What's going on?
No, it's typical of our conversations, Jerry. You've half a point there. There were a couple of weeks when things were Sahara dry in front of goal. And I love the pendulum of football because after the restart, when Spain had gone however many months from March till June without competitive football, I was shocked by the intensity, the level of performance, the athletic fitness. That, if anything, the quality of the football went up after a long and forced break, where maybe now it transpires that rest is quite important for elite athletes, male or female. And there's been a real hair of the dog feel to the beginning of La Liga, whereby the teams that went on a longer run in Europe have looked all out of sorts. They're at 6s and 7s in terms of who's actually fit available, who's match fit, and who's match sharp. That's the way the steps go. And therefore, some of the smaller teams have had a little tilt. That culminated in, and they weren't the first surprise results, but that culminated in 3 crackers this weekend, each of which were really good games. Granada, first of all, beat Sevilla, and that continues the majestical rise of this relatively small club, which is historic in its own way in Spanish football. It's had its day, but beating Sevilla, ending an 18-match undefeated run for Los Rojiblancos, was followed by an absolutely wonderful performance by the other yellow submarine, Cadiz, a passionate kind of local club whereby all kinds of nonsense has gone on in that city over the years that I've been in Spain about ownership, including gunfights. They've got noisy, often quite tipsy fans. They're not allowed to games at the moment, but they're still there. They got to Real Madrid and they beat Real Madrid in Madrid for the first time in their history. And Jared do it comfortably. And it was a fabulous display from Cadiz. And topped off by 2 strikers who'd never played together before, 172-year-old Alvaro Negredo and Choco Lozano, the Honduran, who actually gets the really big goal, beats Courtois, really smashing, flat, all out of sorts by the Spanish champions. And then Getafe, now that I'm not on La Liga television, I can say the actual words, use horseshoes in their boxing gloves, knuckle dusters. The performance by Getafe against Barcelona was everything that we've grown accustomed to from this really cleverly coached, brilliantly organised Madrid-based side, except there was just that extra little Tabasco sauce of thuggery, particularly from big old Alan Neom, who I don't know if he was pitching for a shot NFL, but particularly his body check on Leo Messi was enough to say, like, you might be out in probation in 6 months, never mind was it a red card or not. Seriously.
Right, I didn't see it. That's okay. So it's not. There's no.
Nor did Messi. Nor did Messi. So the wee man was like, "What?"
There's no overarching trend apart from the fact that those teams are going to take some time to get back to full fitness. And in the meantime, hopefully, we're going to see loads of enjoyable shock results, and that might set us up for a very interesting title race.
No, there is an overarching trend. What's been happening for several years now is that it's so difficult to get out of the second division, particularly for clubs who aren't big budget guys bouncing back, that they have to be brilliant in the football direction department because they have to manage their resources without the happy-go-lucky attitude that the Premier League shows, and indeed some of the championships, so throw money at the problem. They can't do that. So it tends to be that the sides that come up, one, are really brilliantly organised in terms of who to buy, when to sell, which kids coming through their academies can work. And they tend to be exceptionally well coached. They don't all play the same style, but it's a really robust league to get out of the second. It doesn't have the same fanfare as the championship, but it's harder to get out of than the championship in England. And therefore, the teams that are coming up, whatever proposition of football, they tend to be exceptionally well organised and packed full of footballers who are either about to burst through or determined to prove themselves. And if you give them 2 weeks, I don't know if it's called that in Ireland or England, the FIFA virus. If you give 2 weeks of planning to a really talented, ambitious, often young coach at Cardiff or Granada or at Getafe is a slightly different case. But, over the years, Eibar have done it, Alaves have done it in recent years. And you allow them 2 clear weeks with 90% of the squad there every day when the big guys aren't only already a little bit toiling under the impact of the mad year we've had, but several of their players are away in Peru or Ecuador or Uruguay or Brazil or Argentina. And then they come back, they've got cotton wool between their ears, they've probably got jet lag. Several of the stars might be benched and only used in extremis. You let the little guys, the Davids, find the time to aim the slingshot right at Goliath's head, then quite often they'll knock him over. There's your trend. And I say to you again, it's about really, really good organisation in the club and really good coaching. Spain is having a brain drain of talent at the moment because there are leagues, particularly England, who go like, we can spend more on the purchase price and the wages, therefore we'll suck talent away. It's like net fishing where you just scoop up everything. But that's not happening to the coaches who are maybe the second line in terms of a profile, but their ability is fantastic. And therefore there's your trend, and it's good to watch. It's fun to watch.
What has been your take on the Ronald Koeman, Lionel Messi romance so far? Is it a romance?
Yeah, no, I get your point. From Messi's side, no. But there's they don't need marriage counselling anymore. Koeman's done some of the things that he promised he would, that I was a little bit doubtful about, but we're still in match day 6 on. So let's keep our powder dry. And I don't mean in a cynical way, that Koeman's tendencies that he's shown across his coaching career, it would be unnatural if they don't resurface. At the moment, what he said he would do was he would put players in their proper position. He would try to build a team around Messi. He would treat Messi like the best footballer he's ever coached with and the best footballer in the world. On the pitch, things have been mixed. Interesting, but mixed. They're distinctly better than they were under Setien. Distinctly better. And until they were thugged off the park against Getafe, they were playing some really quite interesting football. Where are the problems? Well, the fact that on a daily basis, Messi and Koeman are getting on just fine. The atmosphere at training is much more intense and much more respectful. I don't know how often that's a word you use on your show, But we're used to elite teams, certainly in my experience, Madrid and Barcelona, and when we've had really strong Villarreal or Sevilla or Deportivo La Coruña or indeed Atleti, the hunger of the players to be the best and then being at it every day in training is almost self-bound, self-motivated. In this instance, Barcelona had hit a buffer whereby everybody there had won everything or had come in, not won everything, and looked at the big boys and said, oh, those are the habits, and they were bad habits. And that's changed, and Koeman has found respect on Sol. To say that things are back to what they were once at their absolute best would be wrong. To say that Messi has found or has been given the right position in the team without a centre forward, which they don't really have unless they start playing Braithwaite. There's structural problems in the team still, but is it better daily and in some parts of the matches? Definitely. And is the Koeman impact being shown on Serginho Dest, who's coming from Ajax, no experience at this super level, and is playing out of position at left back and looks very, very good. Pedri, please mark down the name. They've found a player that will have everybody around Europe licking the lips. He's younger than Ansu. He hasn't broken records because he's only just breaking in, and he's not an out-and-out goal scorer like Ansu is, but he's younger. 20, 30 days younger. And he's a diamond, an absolute gem of a footballer. So they're going to get knocked over a couple of times in the next few months, Barcelona. No question about it, because the process is slow, but they're going in the right direction.
Okay, so there's green shoots, and we'll see exactly what happens with that. And they're back to the scene of the crime, not literally, but metaphorically, with the Champions League tonight. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of a fallout there is from a psychic energy perspective. Can I ask you about Sevilla against Chelsea? Because this Chelsea team are flaky when it comes to defending and very top-heavy when it comes to attacking. Sevilla are one of those sides who know their way around things, who understand how matches are supposed to work, who know how to get results. And it's kind of the exact test that you would not want if you are Frank Lampard and Chelsea at the moment.
I agree with everything you've said. There are a couple of provisos. One, Sevilla aren't really fluent in front of goal. For example, you'd remember that Luke de Jong erupted against Manchester United with the winner, and then got a couple against, was it Inter in the final, I think. And he's not a fluent goal scorer at Sevilla. At PSV, he was. When he signed and he wasn't finding his rhythm at Sevilla, I went back and used Wisecout to look at his performances at PSV and his last 29 goals. And they were all from at or around the 6-yard area. Whether they were finishes to his feet or headers, they were coming in at him hard from wide positions, and he loved that. His movement, if he doesn't have to do a lot of thinking, a lot of sprinting, his movement is really good. In terms of playing the way that Sevilla play, Luke de Jong is not a natural scorer, and it's important to say that Koundé, who's an exceptional, albeit young, French centre-back, and with Diego Carlos have made one of the best central defensive partnerships in Europe. Koundé isn't going to play, I don't think, and he's the guy that Manchester City, 2 days before deadline, were still trying to get for about 55 million just before they signed the Diaz deal. He's that good, and he's absent, and therefore up top, Sevilla don't really take all the chances. At the back, Koundé is absent. They lost looking tired to Granada at the weekend. And one of the big things over the course of this Champions League group is that the Nervio on the stadium is brilliant. It's one of the best places to play football, but it gives Sevilla wings. And with no fans, I'm not saying I fancy Chelsea outright, but the balancing of the problems you identified at Chelsea would be that maybe Sevilla are a tiny little bit more penetrable at the back, and Sevilla need to find the right way to score goals, particularly Chelsea are shipping them in. Thiago Silva hasn't hit the ground running yet, and it's probably, would you say, going to be Caballero ahead of Kepa? I'd say so.
Yeah, more than likely at this stage. After who knows? Frank Lampard might be wedded to that now that he made the decision at the weekend. It's like, oh God, what do you do? And like,
but one of the things, Joe, that's really important about that debate is that Kepa's record statistically is horrible, and they overpaid badly. And at Athletic, Unai Simon is now looking like the goalie Chelsea thought they'd sign. But Kepa has known for months that both Frank Lampard and Jody Morris don't really rate him, don't really fancy him. Now, whatever he's doing wrong, however much he's been exposed, and I'm not defending him because his record is unacceptable. If you've got in the back of your head, the coach doesn't fancy me, you've got a problem. As soon as Spain start playing again, there was a friendly, I guess, against Portugal. Luis Enrique picks Kepa and goes, I trust you, son. Now, he didn't stand out, but he also didn't let in against Portugal. He comes back, it's a 3-3 against Southampton. Frank says what he says, and you know, for all their spending, you know that at the beginning of the transfer market, just about their number one object was Jan Oblak. And in my opinion, they weren't far away from persuading him to come. And as interesting as Ziyech and Havertz and Thiago Silva and Werner and so on are going to be, Oblak was a deal that they needed above anything else, but by miles.
Yeah, 100%. That's really interesting to hear that they were very close to it. Graham, we're out of time. Great to have you back. Great to have the Champions League back as well. Talk to you real soon. Thanks a million.
Enjoy your football. Up the Villa.
Hey, it's Graham Hunter with us there this morning at 9:35. You're watching OTB AM. A couple of questions. Any news on golf courses staying open? As far as we know, they're not going to be open. There's a statement due today before 12. So whenever these government guidelines are published, there's always room for a little bit of wiggle room and a little bit of last-minute lobbying. But yesterday, certainly the impression coming through was that all sports meant all sports apart from the elite sports. Now, does that mean the under-20 games are gone this weekend? I think there's a lot of clarification that needs to come. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And stay tuned to otbsports.com or get out your OTB Sports app. And as soon as we get any changes, we will update them for you there as well. Now, let me just tell you about this. We are in partnership with Cadbury FC, kicked off a brand new series of in-depth chats with some of the biggest names in world football. The 4th episode sees Harry Redknapp and Glenn Hoddle sit down for an in-depth chat. So stay tuned to OTB's social channels and to OTB Sports Radio. Check out cadburyfc.com for updates on promotions and giveaways. It is an absolutely massive weekend for Irish football. On Friday night at 5 o'clock, Ireland play Ukraine. If we finish second in the group, there's a small chance we qualify automatically for the Euros, which are taking place in England next year. If we finish second, we're at least guaranteed a playoff, and who knows what the quality is going to be like from some of those other teams. Certainly the progress that we've made under Vera Pauw would suggest that we'll give ourselves every chance. So let's hear from Rihanna Jarrett talking with Phil Egan and Leanne Kiernan looking ahead to Friday's clash with Ukraine.
Obviously a very high-profile knee injury over the weekend. Virgil van Dijk come back stronger than ever. You've gone through this experience yourself. I'm sure you're proof that players can recover and get stronger. Do you think after you come through such a serious injury, you feel both physically and mentally stronger?
Obviously a serious injury like that is a long one, and there's no shortcuts in terms of the work and the graft that you have to do to get back on the pitch. I know for me personally, I definitely learned a lot about myself mentally. I was able to push myself to new limits, and I think that definitely helped me not only on the pitch but off the pitch in everyday life as well. And in terms of physically, I think me personally, I think I'm in the best shape that I've been in. I think in my whole career, even before I sustained any of the knee injuries. So it definitely is proof that if you put your mind to it and you put in the work, you can definitely. There's no reasons why you can't come back better than ever.
And just in terms of playing with Brighton now, with the Irish contingent there as well, it must be just. Is this the best fun you've had as a footballer?
Obviously we've got myself, Megan Connolly, and Denise O'Sullivan playing at Brighton, which is fantastic. Obviously we've played alongside each other internationally for the last number of years, and myself and Denise, we played underage together as well. And funnily enough, the three of us are actually living together as well. So it's always nice to have that familiar face. For me, it's obviously my first step up into a professional environment. So I'm really enjoying the fact that I don't have to go to work, kind of sit at a desk, kind of Monday to Friday for 8 hours and then do the training on the side. So definitely enjoying that, and I'm slowly starting to find my form over there as well. So yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it.
And just one final one for me, obviously the Ukraine game, the significance of it, what's at stake, but also the fact that it was the first fixture of Vera. It's a year since. What do you think has improved vastly since Vera took over?
Obviously, I think from previous managers, we had a foundation, and we all knew that under Colin defensive, we had that foundation, and then when Vera came in, at the time she came in, it's allowed us to progress kind of in our attacking form. I think that's been we've seen glimpses of what our attacking players can do. You look at the likes of Kate McCabe, Denise O'Sullivan, Leanne Kiernan, fantastic players going. It's time that we've started to play to each other's strengths, and I think Vera has definitely helped that, and we are looking to play more of an attacking game, and I think we've shown that, and we've a lot more to come. I think there's a lot more to come from us individually and collectively, and hopefully under Vera, as we've seen progress so far, we can continue to see that.
As Vera said in her latest interviews, that is like a cup final to us. And of course it is. It's a very big game and we're all looking forward to it. But we know how much this game means to Ireland, the history behind it. Like, we can get a chance to get to the playoffs. So we're all looking forward to it a lot. And I definitely think we have a great chance of qualifying in both ways, in the playoffs and both going straight through. But let's just hope for the best. And we're really going into the Ukraine game, as I said, a cup final. And it's a massive game for Ireland.
Yeah, kick off 5 o'clock on Friday evening. Now, the 2020 GAA Football All-Ireland Senior Championships are almost here, and to market, SuperValu and OTB are calling on GAA fans across the country to support where you're from. Are you the country's most devoted superfan? Send us your videos with the evidence of how much of a superfan you and your family are, and there's some great prizes up for grabs. Send your 20-second videos of a pre-match speech, a pre-match setup at home, or better still, live match reactions. We want to see why your county team means so much to you. Get them into us on social media using the hashtag where you're from, or you can WhatsApp them to us as well on our WhatsApp number 0879 180 180. We'll choose a winner every Friday during the championship. Each weekly winner lands a €200 voucher for a SuperValu near you, and you also have the chance to star in SuperValu's Superfans series, which is a fly-on-the-wall peek inside the homes of dedicated supporters around the country. Check out facebook.com/SuperValu Ireland for more, and you can tell us about what you think is going to happen with the championships as well on that same number. 0879 180 180 is the number there. Now, I want to bring you this as well. Eoin caught up with Mick Galwey for a chat yesterday afternoon. You can hear the full podcast on the OTB Podcast Network later on this morning. We're bringing you about 20 minutes now. Enjoy.
Okay, so this week, October 19th to the 25th, is Heartburn Awareness Week. And yesterday, it was revealed that more than 1/3 of the Irish population are living with heartburn. Unfortunately, for those living with the condition, 1 in 5 confirmed that their heartburn has worsened since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the reasons cited for this include COVID-19 related stress, increased snacking, and work-related stress as well. If you're experiencing symptoms of heartburn, we encourage you to visit your local pharmacist to get it under control. And to talk about this, Ireland, Munster and Kerry legend Mick Galwey is with us. How are you getting on, Mick?
I'm great. Sure, thank you. I'm very good.
Is heartburn something you suffer with?
Yeah, it is something I've suffered for a while. And, there was a time maybe, foolishly, I ignored it for a long time. But then, I just got to my doctor, got to my pharmacist, and they just put me on the right medication, and I'm a different man since. You know what I mean? It's and again, like as you said, the triggers that I had were spicy food or coffee, or again, can be stress related or whatever. But when it's keeping you up at night, I decided I had to do something about it, and thankfully, and I would really encourage people, just if they do have those symptoms, it's an easy fix. So go see your pharmacist or doctor and get the advice, because it's there.
Did you have any mild version of it during your playing days at all?
I didn't really. You know what I mean? I probably not really during my playing days. It's probably after. You know what I mean? And I suppose in my playing days, and I look back on it like I could eat as much as I wanted, and you know what I mean? And like you're burning it off, and I was obviously a bit bigger then, and maybe, well, certainly bigger in had more muscle. But I found that then when I was maybe not doing as much exercise, and that kind of brought it on as well. But no, certainly it was only really when I finished playing that it started to come against me. But it's like I'm a different man now. You know what I mean? Just getting something as bit of medication is all you need, and it's out there. You know what I mean? So I would seriously encourage people to get it looked at if they're having the symptoms.
It definitely feels that this year has allowed people to look after themselves a little bit more, or probably forced people to look after themselves a little bit more over a range of things. If heartburn is almost a way for people to start thinking about their body a bit more, then that can only be a positive thing for a whole range of reasons, Mick.
Absolutely. You know what I mean? This whole, I suppose, with the pandemic and people being at home, I think it's been a time of reflection, maybe. You know what I mean? Yeah. People give them a chance to maybe just, you know, have a look at what's important in life. And you know what I mean? And health is obviously very important. We've seen what we're going through at the moment with COVID-19. But certainly, you know, we have to take the precautions there, of course. But, you know, I think we should look at all our health issues, and particularly something like heartburn, because, you know, something like that can really, it can put you under a lot of pressure, and as I said earlier, there was nights I couldn't sleep, and you know what I mean, and that doesn't go well, and then it affects your day, and you know what I mean. But thankfully, I have it under control now. And with those sleepless nights, like, is there anything you can do in the middle of the night to get back to sleep, or how bad does it get? There isn't really, but like, what you'd find is that you'd be up and walking around, because you know, when you're lying down, sometimes the pressure would actually feel bad, and then you'd have a kind of tightness in your chest, and that's some of the symptoms, and you're wondering what's going on here. But you know, but thankfully it was just something as like heartburn. You know what I mean? And you know, you often hear people saying, "Oh, heartburn can be the sign of something else or heart issues," but it wasn't. You know what I mean? And thankfully it wasn't. So it was just the heartburn, and get it sorted. It's an acid that comes up, and it's very uncomfortable, but it's very fixable as well. That is good to hear. It's an interesting time, I'd say, a fun enough time for you as a sports fan at the moment, Mick. Obviously, your two passions colliding brilliantly over the last few days. You got GAA from Kerry coming back to the centre stage last weekend, the Six Nations, and of course, you've had Munster in action over the last few months as well. Can I just ask you about the GAA? Is it something that you pay very close attention to? You're constantly looking to see how Kerry are faring and watching all of their matches? Absolutely. And I'm living in Kilkenny now, so you know, you're going from one hotbed of GAA. I'm here 25 years, and I won't call myself an expert in hurling, but I know a fair bit about it. Let's put it that way. So I follow obviously the Gaelic football, and it was great to see Kerry do well at the weekend. But I felt sorry for the Kerry hurlers yesterday, for example. You know what I mean? I would love to have seen them obviously beat Antrim, and you know, they were down by 3 points, but I would love to see my native Kerry playing in Nolan Park against Kilkenny. I think that would be one of my dreams if I could see that. You know what I mean? Because you know, we all know how good Kilkenny are. But you know, Kerry aren't bad either. You know, they've got a few decent players. Jane Conway is an amazing player. But you know, it's just I followed GAA the whole time, and it's amazing, even with the middle of all this COVID, with 4 Kerry teams playing over the weekend. You know, you had 2 hurling teams. Unfortunately, they were both beaten. The minors are beaten as well by Tipperary. It's their first time being in the minor championship for a long time. And unfortunately, our under-20s were beaten by Galway. But you know, that's the way it is. But I suppose the big one really is our senior team, and they looked to be very impressive on Saturday up in Monaghan. And you know, hopefully if this championship keeps going, and I'm certainly hoping it will. You know, we could have sport right up to Christmas, because I think, you know, particularly, you know, and I know there's a lot of, I suppose, there's different opinions out there, you know, but I mean, but sport is very important. You know what I mean? And sport, once it's ran well, and once the, I suppose, all the precautions and safety is put in, I don't think it should be a problem. Can I ask, when you're watching a game of football, what type of footballer do you like to watch? What position, what style of player do you like seeing? Yeah, you see, my football would be the football of the, I suppose, of the 80s, really. You know what I mean? And again, I was lucky enough to be involved with Kerry. The 80s spells silky, stylish football. That's what it says to me. It certainly is. And what I liked about that football was attack, you know what I mean, which was great. I know that the game has changed, and you have blanket defenses now, and it's more tactical. But what I loved about the game back in the 80s was it's just the natural flair and skill. You know what I mean? And you know what I saw it recently, and I talked about that. Well, my own girls were playing in a ladies football match recently. It was like Kilkenny City were playing Thomastown. It was a final and they won, but I just thought the standard of football and ladies, they just go all out attack. There's no such thing as blanket defence. Players kind of stay in their own positions, you know what I mean? They're not roaming around the place, but I just thought it was lovely football. But certainly, yeah, what kind of football do we look for? Look, you know, obviously, when I look at, you know, some of the Kerry lads, you know what I mean? David Clifford, like, you know, what you see in him is pure class, you know what I mean? I just think that, you know, what he has achieved so far in a Kerry jersey has been phenomenal. And, you know, people are comparing him to Maurice Fitzgerald and the Gooch and Mikey Sheahan and John Egan and all these great, and the Bomber even for that matter, all these great forwards of the past. But certainly he's up there with the best. And what I like about him, he's got a great temperament, you know what I mean? And then that's the kind of player I like, you know what I mean? And, you know, David Moran has been phenomenal for Kerry down through the years. His consistency has been great. He's a bit of old school, and yet he has got I suppose he's got the skill set and certainly the fitness to play as a modern day midfielder, because he's been there for a while, and you know he's still a very important part of what Kerry are doing. And then you look at someone like, you know, I go back to my day. I thought, in my book, one of the most natural footballers ever was Seamus Moynihan. You know what I mean? I know he's gone on wide, and a lot of people mightn't have seen it, but certainly watching one of those many hundreds of replays I've seen during COVID. That's the good thing about COVID. We saw plenty of replays, but I saw him, I think it was in the 2000 final. Seamus Moynihan, I thought he was phenomenal. And he had what? He had natural football, he had skill, he had a brain, he had everything. You know what I mean? And I think if modern day footballers, if they look at that, and they, you know, because sometimes fellas can get caught up with maybe strength conditioning or diet or whatever, you know what I mean? But it's the natural football is great to watch, and I can watch it forever.
You were a footballer who made it to the very highest level in rugby. Who is the current modern footballer who would have the best chance of making it to the highest level in rugby today?
Yeah, it's a good question. Someone like Aidan O'Shea would certainly have the physicality for it. You know what I mean? There's no doubt about that. And you know, and I've seen him, and I'm thinking, well, you know, where would you play him? You could play him in the centre. You know what I mean? But he is, as we would say, he's a big unit, and he'd be able to look after himself. You know what I mean? And yet, you know, there's so many, you know, there's so many positions, and in rugby now, it's certainly, I suppose, particularly when you're playing in the backs or whatever, it's the skill set is huge. But I would certainly think that again, someone like David Clifford would make a very good rugby player. Where to play him, not too sure, but you know what I mean. You know, I wouldn't like to be marking one-on-one on the wing, because he has a dummy that, you know, when you can send it for a dummy in Gaelic football, it's I'm not saying it's easier in rugby, but you have more opportunities to do it in rugby, you know.
There was some talk after the World Cup that we should be tapping a little bit more into the vast GAA resources we have in this country. Do you think that's something that the IRFU should actively try to do, to see these fantastic young athletes that often when they make it in professional sport, it's going all the way to Australia, and the resources lost to the country as a whole?
Absolutely, and you know, and look, I've seen players down through the years, and I've seen modern day players, and you're thinking, wow, wouldn't they make fantastic rugby players? And indeed in both football and hurling, you know, you look at the great hurlers, like, and they're all able to mix it. They've all got talent. Someone like TJ Reid, I'm sure he'd make an unbelievable hurler. You know what I mean? But yeah, certainly something that you know, that the IRFU should look at, because we're a country the same size as New Zealand, you know what I mean? And they don't have Gaelic football, and they don't have hurling, you know what I mean? But they have phenomenal players. And yet, before the last World Cup, I think rugby would be probably our fourth sport. We're number one in the world statistically. Anyway, that was before it, but of course, the only time to be number one in the world is after the Rugby World Cup. But unfortunately, that didn't work out. But yeah, we've so much raw talent, and and I know a lot of rugby players, but particularly some of the lads in Kerry that I know, where they love the rugby and they love to give it a go. You know, so there should be opportunities there for them. What you find is, I suppose, a lot of these young lads, like, they go through they're involved in I suppose in Gaelic football, and sometimes and in schools and that. So it's hard for them to I suppose to do everything. But I certainly I certainly benefit from playing Gaelic football. There's no doubt about that. I only took up rugby by chance, and then I realised it was for me. You know what I mean? And but like there's so many other players that I'd love to see them get that opportunity, and I'd encourage players. You know what I mean? Try all sports. I even played a lot of basketball when I was younger, and it certainly stood to me. You know what I mean? So because there's different skill sets for all different games, and I think they all complement each other.
When you say you decided that rugby was for you, how difficult a decision was that? And I guess would it have been a tougher decision to make had you been 5 years older and you were winning maybe one or two more All-Irelands with Kerry?
Yeah, it was. You see, in some ways, I won't say it was an easy decision for me because I was blessed to have been involved with Kerry in 1986 as a 19-year-old. And, we won the All-Ireland. And I had at that stage I had played with Sheahan, and I played senior with Sheahan. I played Munster under 20s, so I got the taste for the rugby, even though I was only playing it for 2 years at that stage. I didn't take up rugby until I was 17. But then, like in '87, I played for the Munster senior team. You know what I mean? Rugby team. So I suppose if I was part of a Kerry team that I could see another 4 or 5 All-Irelands in, it might have been a harder decision. As I said, when I finished rugby, Kerry didn't win another All-Ireland for 11 years, and I doubt if I would have made any difference. By the time Kerry won the next All-Ireland, I was a professional rugby player. You know what I mean? I had gone through the whole lot of amateur playing, and so I was a professional sports person. But certainly, I don't think Cork were coming good, Meath were coming good, the northern teams were coming good. So, which yes, I would have loved to. I'd love to play a bit more, and I did for a few years. You know what I mean? I played, let's say, league matches, and sometimes, like I remember, playing, even county championship down in Kerry. I remember playing for Munster on a Saturday and playing a county final on a Sunday. You know what I mean? And it just doesn't happen that we won. Well, we won the county final. I think we were beaten in the rugby match the previous year. We were playing London counties, which was a combination of Saracens, Wasps, and Harlequins. So that was a pretty good team. You know what I mean? But funny enough, because of that, I captained Kerry the following year, the first round of the championship against Limerick. That was 18-9. So that's something I was very proud of. I had a 100% record. We beat Limerick, but I was dropped in for the next match. But I also did the same year, and I think back on it now, and it's madness. I played against the All Blacks 5 months later for Munster, you know what I mean? So when I think of that now, I'm actually very proud of it. Who captains our county in championship and plays against the All Blacks in the same year? I doubt very much that'll be repeated. No, I might be wrong, but I'll put a challenge up to anybody. Let's put it that way.
89. So that's Miko's last year, isn't it?
That's Miko's last year. Yeah.
Does he try and have a word at all, or is he kind of the opinion that it is his last year and maybe he doesn't try as hard to win you over for the Kerry football side of things?
Yeah, I don't know really. And although Miko, I had a great relationship with Miko. Miko asked me out straight one time. Are you going to stay at the rugby or do the football? And I said I'd probably go back to play a bit of rugby. And he said, you should. There's more money, it says Miko, even though there was nothing in it at the time. But funny enough, I remember in '93, Ogie Morden was Kerry trainer, and I'd been dropped off the Irish team, and then I actually went into one training session in Tralee, and then I was brought back into the Irish team, and that's the time I got to try against England, and then I was picked on the Lions tour. You know what I mean? But my intention that time was to go back and give Kerry a handout, or probably Ogie more than thing. You know what I mean? But then I was picked on the Lions tour, and I was gone for 10 weeks. So that's the way it was. But look, I've always had the graw for Gaelic football. There's no doubt about that.
And can I just ask then, I guess in the late 80s, the idea of professionalism is surely becoming quite real in rugby at that point. Does that affect your decision-making at all?
It didn't really, you know what I mean? It didn't, because I suppose what I really wanted to do is I wanted to play for Ireland and I wanted to play for Munster. And, you know, I saw the path there. I was playing with Sheahan, you know, and back then the All-Ireland League was kicking off, and, you know, it was just becoming, I suppose, more of a... There was more opportunities in rugby, you know what I mean? Like, I was going on tour, and I was, you know, particularly when you get involved in Irish squads, like, it was amazing. And, you know, even though I wasn't professional, but it was certainly something different that I had ever seen in Gaelic. It was like every weekend was an All-Ireland weekend, you know what I mean? That kind of a thing. So it was... you know, going like back in the day when we'd be going to Dublin, you know, for the squad sessions and that, was great. It was tough, but it was great to be part of it. And I just seemed to enjoy it, and I liked it. But then again, of course, you know, I was nearly 30 years of age. I was 29 when the game went professional, and people were thinking, you know, is this going to be the end or whatever? But I remember I got 7 one-year contracts off the RFU, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
If they'd given me a 3-year contract, maybe first day out, I might have thrown in the towel, but I was playing for my life, you know what I mean? So every year they renewed my contract, you know what I mean? But some of the younger lads were getting 3- and 4-year contracts, but you know, it was the best thing that ever happened because it kept you on your toes and kept you going. And yeah, money didn't make any difference to you when you were playing the game, but it certainly, when it's your job, you actually do it better. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I'll say. But it doesn't determine. It doesn't make you go out and try harder. But you certainly will make more sacrifices and you know and put in the hours and put in the hard work that it has to be a professional sports person.
OTB AM.
That's Eoin there with Mick Galwey. You can hear the rest of that chat on our YouTube channel or a podcast, Rugby on OTB, OTB Rugby. Subscribe to it there. And that's it from us this morning. A reminder, OTB is live in association with Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette, giving you the confidence to tackle the day ahead. Great day on OTB Sports Radio. The classic is The Brawl. It's the Mayo Meath game, our documentary on that. OTB Gold is Cora Staunton. Dadcast from 3. Mount Rushmore today is Cork. OTB Gold is Keith Andrews meeting Philly McMahon. And tonight on Off the Ball, Cian Lynch, Sonia Sullivan and Philippe O'Clair. If you've missed anything on the show this morning, Dr. Mary Horgan, Ken Robinson of DCU, Tommy Walsh, Mick Galwey, Graham Hunter, and we'll see you tomorrow morning from 7:30. Andy Mitten's going to join us from Paris for a reaction to tonight's Champions League tie. We'll also speak with Claire Hurler, Tony Kelly. See you tomorrow.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, we don't just play the game, we change it. Gillette, made of what matters.